Welcome everybody to the round of 8 or the quarterfinals here for the Rainbow Six Collegiate Championship. My name is Phil, also joined here today by Reese up in the booth with me. How you doing today, man?
Well, we're here, we're alive, and we're ready to cast some Rainbow Six. We have made it into, honestly, for the R6 Collegiate Championship, what is like kind of almost halfway through our circuit. I mean, it seems crazy to think this is playoffs, but you put that in the broader perspective, we still have the wild card tournament, we still have the UCC, we have a long ways to go down the line, and though we've gotten through almost the first half of what we've got for this league, there are many more memories left to come.
Yeah, but taking a look at the matchup here today, we've got Akron versus Kettering. Starting out here at the rosters for Team Akron, we can get to go and see who they've got for their main five tonight and, maybe be able to do a little bit of digging on them. I definitely know a couple of these players like the back of my hand. We've got IMAT, Arv, Jetcon, Jobu, and Hennessy. People that have been around the block a handful of times, so this is pretty good territory for them here in the collegiate sceneries.
Yeah, these players are incredibly well familiarized with themselves, and Akron has been on kind of an upwards trend recently. They had that sort of, dry spell, maybe would be the way to describe it, but they have been working on the fundamentals. They've been recently playing with Fozo, who is not on the active roster for tonight's playoff match, so they will have to play without him. But they've been working on all the good stuff that we know Akron is possible of. They face Kettering, a roster who has kind of an opportunity to maybe dispel some naysayers about their roster. Kettering performed really well at the Purdue LAN. They made a really lasting impression with me. Since then, maybe they quite haven't lived up to the stories of some of the other rosters. But you look at some of the more top-performing teams from Purdue, we haven't really seen Ohio State. The Buckeyes haven't been particularly active. They made it to number 3 in that event. Kettering kind of a similar situation here, but let's get into the roster. It's captained by Bucka. I've been through this Kettering team so many times.
Yeah, Papa P as well, Amplified Derp and Anomaly, and yeah, Bucka is probably one of my favorite players to talk to. He always has such a nice and innovative mind, just a fun guy to hang around, and he knows the game quite well. Hence why they really did give an amazing fight against Purdue, and I'm hoping the same thing can be said here against Akron. You'd hope in the round of 8 in the quarterfinals that you would see just back and forth between these two teams for all the right reason. Just two very solid lineups here, and maybe the map bans could have a part to play in that as well. Maybe the comfort picks could reign true, or just more of the default shenanigans, since we're not in that best of 5 range just yet, still in the BO3s until the grand finals. But so far here for the picks and bans, we've got Akron starting out with Chalet, then flying up with Kettering's pick of Oregon, and then finally the decider that will be Villa. Everything looks pretty normal so far, except for maybe the Chalet, but it's been a very good pick to say the least in these past couple of seasons.
I'm all for it. I think it's a point Chief makes a lot. He really appreciates teams that try to innovate, to try to bring in more Chalet. And we were talking before the broadcast even started. I said Chalet feels almost as if the new Cafe does have that sort of attackers need to giddy up and go. Same sort of way that plays out through the mid-round. And the maps are very similar. I'm personally glad. I kind of like Chalet a little bit better. I'm not sure what it is about the map. Maybe it's because Cafe is like so tall. There's so many floors you got on that map. It kind of gets a little dizzying sometimes. But for Chalet to be there, Oregon for Kettering, going back to the basics, a lot of structure on that map. Kettering are a really disciplined team. I think it's going to perform well for them.
Yeah, and also for Villa, I mean, especially for Akron, they are a very aggressive team. They like to get their hands dirty. So having the whole map to kind of go on that roam game, the whole basement floor is kind of like that ease of access to just kind of get around the entire map scot-free. That is something nice to see. So all these maps really do tailor well to the play style of both Kettering and Akron. And I mean, I could probably count, not even count at this point, I could probably name off the amount of times I've seen Akron play on Chalet. So maybe this could be their map pick to take things off in the right direction. But I think Kettering will be well versed in this first map as well.
I think Chalet for Akron as well kind of speaks to the way that they're moving with their roster. Maybe not the number one team that was playing Chalet out of the gate, but they're trying to implement some different stuff. They're going in a different direction, which is a good idea. You know, Akron for a long time, the direction they had was fine. They had that dynasty. They had numerous championship titles. But then they found themselves in that dry spell, as I called it earlier, that sort of period where now you've got so many more challengers, you've got a huge injection of prize money and teams competing at such an incredible level with Chalet as our first map in the quarterfinals. I really can't wait to dig in.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the bands might be perhaps interesting, but so far That will not be the case. We've got Flores off the chopping block first and foremost. He's a very good operator to bring here. The shield presence, especially on sites like Barn Gaming, when you need that top four extension near blue and mezzanine, the Flores just allows that pressure to be alleviated almost instantly. So makes sense to get him off the board. We've seen him banned much more in this upcoming season. And Thatcher, he's still a staple in terms of operators to ban. So that doesn't really shock me either, Reese.
It's going to be hard to get away with Thatcher left through, and we do have Maverick left, so he'll be available. I think that's going to make things a little bit maybe more easy for the attackers to kind of get in, do their stuff. Cade, we'll see if he does make it through as well. I think that would be kind of the counter in that relationship. In fact, he does. And so too does the Valkyrie. You do kind of get that sometimes with the Flores and Wamai little ban there. I made a point on a cast a couple of weeks ago that when you ban Flores, you kind of also want to chop off the Wamai, because if you don't got the Rotero drones and you've got Wamai, you've got Jaeger, you've also got a Rooney, it can kind of get a little confusing.
Yeah, thankful that will not be an issue here today for the side of either Akron or Kettering. Still, though, plenty of options for utility. We've been seeing a lot more Castle in the meta currently, and he flows really well with the Rooney, who is also quite strong, especially when you want to defend Barn Gaming, and even Master Bedroom as well if you have the Surya Gates added towards near both the office and piano door. But of course, with her not being in the pick right now, we'll have to scratch that for later in the matchup. Still, plenty of staple picks, like that Echo, for example, who's fantastic for that plant denial. But Kettering, they don't want to put all their eggs into one basket, especially on a site like Master and Office, where it's kind of hard to have that anchor game really thrive. So you need to start off strong with that roam presence. So both Bucket and Derp really have big shoes to fill, because if they fall early on, that's a lot of pressure that can be given away to Akron fairly easy.
I've seen so many teams kind of go to bat and don't play that roam for this side, and they go down so easy. It allows the attackers to set up too quickly. They get all these strong positions. When you don't got any kind of threat over towards that library area, or if there's some sort of vertical presence that's coming in as well, having these specialist operators like your Vigil and your Oryx is just a huge boon for any defensive look. Akron started off coming from Helipad, however, since then seem to be rotating for solar pressure.
And that's one new adaptation we've been seeing more and more by teams, is they don't want to deal with all that library presence. They don't want to worry about a blue stairs flank. They want to get pretty much right into the action. They want to go near the solar windows and maybe clear out trophy room for some extra cutoff for that roam presence. And then they can already get that back wall opened up and maybe try to implement some sort of post-plant position, especially when you have the Nomad on the board. You only need to fling out a couple of air jabs and can maybe save the rest of your primary gadget for that post-plant position to make sure that the defender retake during that post-plant is just so challenging for Kettering to try to actually come back out as a victory and get that diffuser down.
In a very quiet 60 seconds of action phase so far, but things could look very explosive with Bucka still down in the basement. Hard to say whether or not Akron are going to react to this. They've got Arv just sort of sitting and waiting on that door. As Hennessy still fights from the rappel to continue applying pressure, IMAT suddenly realizes, yeah, we do have a little bit of a problem. We do have some attention to pay below, with Derp coming towards this dining look. Akron have secured control of Solarium, though. Probably the most important note and things that have happened so far in Amplify defeats the Finca. Looked like the Russian operator had the win there on the gunfight, but the Jaeger somehow pulls it out, and now even furthermore, Bucka adds a second. Hennessy on the trade, though.
At least there's something for your troubles. Still having to worry about Bucka, though. Almost caught on ADSing, but still wins that gunfight against Hennessy. Case now drop. It's a pretty challenging predicament here. And although Bucka is low, he's right next to the site, so he could have plenty of coverage by his teammates to go for a simple trade. And it really shouldn't be that difficult of a position here for Kettering, since they only have to find JetCon in this last minute.
JetCon really has not got a lot going for him, and Akron sort of getting stuck up and caught in a trap that was the Solarium take they wanted to implement. They never really got anything else here, and the problem that this was just a solar take is going to begin to dawn on JetCon. My team didn't set up really anything else for me. We just tried to get that one room of pressure, and we couldn't even accomplish that without a lot of damage being dealt to us by walk-ups from bathrooms, by flanks from below, and it's kind of a sour note for Akron to start out on here, especially given, number one, this their map choice, and also the favored starting side. Depends really how you look at it here. JetCon had managed that one player by display case. He's still got 3 left, though.
20 seconds to try to find these next couple of kills. Doesn't really seem like that's an option for Akron anymore. They might just mock this up as their first loss on the round. Just so many medium range angles this guy has to deal with. At least isolates out Anomaly, but still, only 7 seconds left. A triple kill for JetCon. I might need to hold
Oh.
my tongue, but Bucka is playing this one so patiently. JetCon swinging around the corner, goes for the free fire, but Bucka has hurt him, so he'll just fall back into Bathroom, then Piano to guarantee that Kettering will still get that round win, despite JetCon managing to find 3 of that LMGE.
It's really sort of a scary thing to say there. We're talking about Akron losing that first round, you know, just the way that they kind of came in and were unsuccessful. And then you see a JetCon. He sort of starts to start stacking them up. You know, you're sort of talking about, well, you know, he's just got one. He's just had a kill total. And then, you know, a couple seconds later, he's in a one-on-one. If he had intel on that Bathroom player, maybe that goes a different way. And that's a big part of why Akron are such an involved team, are such a scary team when they come to game day.
Moving into bar and gaming, we could maybe see more of that util emphasis with both the Aruni Castle and now also the Jaeger on the board. This could potentially allow for library to be hold a little while longer, maybe having someone play close to that hatch for the drop down. That's a pretty common setup that Akron actually likes to go for, so maybe Kettering will try to be involved in that department as well. And also still having 2 shields with the Thorn now is an option here for Derp and just in the competitive pool altogether. That can also allow for the mezzanine hold to be quite strong as well, just to back up anyone playing near the top of blue or again inside a library, just to make sure that Akron has to really work to get this top floor pressure to only then go for the vert in the hands of Arv.
Well, I have had a couple opportunities to watch some Thorn in play. It was mainly over in the Canada Contenders League during last week's broadcast. Haven't seen her play on Chalet yet, and I really wonder what the thought is going to be here. The Razor Blooms are great at kind of stopping the attackers and forcing them to make a very clear decision. For example, if you're trying to rush in from that gaming window, if you've got a Razor Bloom there, it's not like you could just, okay, turn around and jump back out as soon as you realize things are not going to go your way. And for that take, generally, I'll say you kind of have to commit to it either way. It doesn't really matter if there's a Razor Bloom, because if you try to turn your back there, you're probably going to get shot from the hatch. But even with that in play, having Razor Blooms is really going to force the attackers to make some very specific decisions, and we see the first Razor Bloom destroyed there by a grenade from IMAT.
Thankfully, the bear trap got caught in that too, so no one going to get injured for free just yet on the side of Akron. We've got Bucka receiving a lot of pressure so far, heading in both through library and that top blue window, but a very good run out by Derp to actually catch JetCon off guard. The player who brought things down from 1v4 all the way to 1v1 is now completely off the book, and now Kettering will once again win that opening duel and force Akron to kind of slow down and think about their current positions. They might need someone back on that snowy window. IMAT just hops right in by himself, having no coverage via a teammate, and if IMAT falls here, that is once again just going to be a great position here by Kettering, but no, it will not be the Finka. Instead, Derp is able to get rid of Jobu, but it's still a 5v3 favoring the side of Kettering.
There's IMAT being that player we know he can be, opening up space, relieving some pressure on himself, but also to the rest of the team. Control of the top floor looks to be made in the next few seconds as the rest of Kettering have fallen back. I think you can say for the defense here, they've sort of accomplished what they came for on the top ground. They eliminated one of the entries. They got rid of the flank watch as well. With Jobu gone, Akron are going to have less burn to rely on. They only have 1 frag grenade remaining, which could be a little problematic. You see you've got castle barricades left up. There's going to be some utility that you'll need to think about removing. I'm at still sort of considering the basement, which is important here. Kettering with the vertical now established up above, you would imagine that basement area going to be a popular fallback option.
40 seconds left to kill. Still having one player actually stacked up near the snowmobile stairs, so that could be something to work out here for Kettering to catch someone on Akron off guard. We have IMAT rotating around in through the double window, maybe hopping into mud as well. Arv is able to catch one off screen, so things are equalized, but there are still plenty of power positions to hold here for Kettering, despite the fact they have lost the man advantage.
Wow, look at the kill there from Anomaly, responding with some action, and Derp as he steps up. Unfortunately, Arv has dropped down the hatch. I think the Thorn is unaware of it, though, and it's confirmed. Arv having major impact so far, and only 10 seconds left. He needs to make it in. Bulletproof camera, he'll need to shoot it, and now the Frost has no question where this final attacker is. The Sledge will get off the plant, knows he has to go for the kill, and he gets a shot on target, but Anomaly's got the head. A defensive closeout again. It comes down to 1v1, even though despite that round looking the majority of the time to be in Kettering's favor.
And back again for Kettering. I mean, they had fantastic patience. At least Anomaly did in that 1 versus 1. And yeah, Derp as well having all that pressure near Snowmobile Stairs. There was just no time left to drone by Akron. They had a couple moments to catch the vertical, which was great by Arv. He was still able to do his job despite the man disadvantage and kind of a lack of general time, but it still worked. A couple of trades favoring them, which gave them enough time to properly actually move a floor lower and almost get that round in the bag, but they just forgot to check their corners. Remember the stairs that can be held by Kettering to hold that rotate slash flank position, and it just kind of caught them in a bad spot. But still, 2 rounds in the books for Kettering already. They're doing a fantastic job on the map of Akron, especially on the side, which normally isn't the favorable position. Normally you see a more attacker-sided Chalet most of the time, but so far that has not been the case.
Anomaly going for some exercise here inside the kitchen. I think it's likely we'll have to go for a rehost, and Bucka will confirm that as well. But while we wait to see if the Tachanka does indeed get to play round number 3 without a rehost, I wanted to bring up the topic of the way that we've seen this roster play so far for Kettering. I love how measured it is. They kind of do the right thing in a lot of these different moments. It's not only being patient, it's also realizing when it's time to throw out the patience and start to kind of get aggressive. When you know that you've got IMAT inside library, kind of need to do something about that.
Yeah, and eventually we also saw the fallback happen too. We didn't have the side of Kettering actually overstayed their presence. They still had the man advantage, and they knew, well, there isn't a lot of time. Despite the fact Arv is alive on the sledge, there aren't many positions that he can open up. We only saw him activate his breaching hammer for just a few short moments. It did find him a lot of kills, don't get me wrong, but it was still an advantage there, favoring for Kettering once they had Derp once again open up the kill feed. I believe he found 3 overall, because not only did he find that double kill heading in the top of Snowmobile Stairs, but he also got the opening duel as a win against JetCon, which completely denied a whole chunk of the map to properly clear out blue, which was a huge issue in the early and mid game for the offense.
And I suppose to tag on to that point as well, you've got Derp active. You've also seen a couple moments from Bucka, who has been active on the flank. So you've got a Kettering roster, not only that is playing really smart team-wise, but also the individual fights are being won. Seems like a very boiled-down concept, but when you've got Akron, who are trying to get their entries in, but they've been stopped in both these 2 rounds so far, it kind of tells you maybe the Akron system isn't really working tonight. And on your own map pick, you don't want to start to let it slip away. And I know as soon as the Kettering win on this map becomes a reality, we'll start to discuss perhaps it's just the Collegiate special in work again. It still shows you that Kettering are a team that can come to any map and look prepared.
Well, until we figure out everything in the background, I'll have to take a quick little break and hopefully get this matchup of Chalet back and ready in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere.
Well, a quick rehost later, we're back into the game between Akron and Kettering here in the quarters with only the Elite 8 teams remaining. Round number 1 and 2, our favored Kettering Glow closed down in a 1 versus 1. So Akron coming close, but never really to do with the structure of their offense so far. It's been kind of a late game cleanup by 1 or 2 players.
Moving into kitchen and dining as well, I'm hoping that Akron kind of don't stall out once again. They've had a small amount of trouble trying to clear out that vital map control, and in particular the roam game, where it's not going to be as volatile with having both Derp and Bucka, for example, on the Vigil slash, Oryx duo. Instead, they're going to be more on those slightly flex-ish roles, playing on that top floor and having both the castle and the Tachanka, which cuts off a lot of choke points. And the range department, especially for the Shamika launchers, can really be a huge effect against Akron when they're trying to clear out this top floor, because you could probably sit all the way in the back of Solar and just rain down Hellfire leading in through certain parts of offices, which could really force the hand of Akron and might even make them have to actually completely rethink their attacking style based on the fact we have both the castle and Tachanka here on the board. It might just be too much to handle potentially.
Another thing, operators-wise, I'd like to draw some attention to would have to be Akron and Arv's choice to bring a Buck in this composition. You're thinking vertical, right? Well, this is an extension up above. So what is your Buck really going to do to try to clear out the top floor roam? And why wouldn't you instead bring a sledge if ostensibly the Buck is going to be used here in the opposite way to get vert from above to look down on the site? Maybe my eyes would think towards the possibility of Buck on a late rotation to the basement. You could try to tear open some of the floors by trophy with so many castle barricades that you've got. The Buck can actually shoot his skeleton key all the way down from the basement up to the second floor, especially for an area like bathroom, hut, as well as some of the areas towards the back of Solarium. JetCon, though, with the opening pick, marking the first time Akron find it early.
Well, that's a huge buff there for them. And already actually trying to establish some pressure near the middle floor as well, so that rotate from the top floor is just much smoother. However, they cannot forget about people like Derp, Anomaly, and even Amplify, for example, as well on this top floor, because especially having that Aruni in the books for Kettering, they could actually play vertical and counteract the default plant heading in through dining room. So eventually we'll need to see more of that pressure established moving up to try to deal with that Tachanka, deal with the Aruni play, because like I mentioned, if they don't, it's going to be just a complete fatal funnel, and that could honestly give away another round in a row for Kettering on their defense.
Well, the opening now of that southern wall will show you the unfortunate reality it is to have C4s over impact grenades in this scenario. Akron have so much time to work with. They've got a huge line of sight right into the objective. I suppose the only thing still working for Kettering, not an entire solid control up above. An Anomaly just comes through the rotate to cut down Arv, trying to play that west main cutoff. Seems like they know the Cade's here as well, and the head peeks around the corner. IMAT's got one in to move it back to an Akron favor.
Still plenty of time left here for Akron to drone out, gather that information, and force away Anomaly. A well-tossed nade could have been his doom, but having IMAT with no more nades left in their pocket, it does force only flash grenades left in the pocket of Akron, but still, they've got plenty of use to force out this player, and now having a substantial man advantage as well. They truly can isolate Anomaly, but they need to remember they've got to work for that pick and not just try to fall back on that plant position instead.
I think the one trouble here, you don't have a lot of soft destruction to get rid of the shield, and what do you do when you don't have soft destruction? Sometimes it's get a little aggressive. That move didn't net anything for IMAT. He's down for the count, and Hennessy taking damage as well. A late vertical play by JetCon won't be enough to dissuade Derp, because in the meanwhile, the LMG is still firing in the objective. The Tachanka, perhaps the operator this strat was entirely built around, has somehow carried them through. JetCon, again, another 1v1. Could be an ace on the cards here for the Tachanka, but he might just let the clock elapse. That's exactly what happens. Another 1v1 finish. Every round so far has had one.
But to be honest, Reese, we really should have seen that win come out by Akron. They had so much secondary utility to clear out Anomaly. They had 6 different flash grenades, and they had all the time in the world to actually push against him from more than one direction. We didn't see anybody from the double wall throwing out flashes. We saw nobody out in the Surya gate. It was just funneling and almost bottlenecking into the Tachanka of Anomaly, and it worked wonders for him, because all he had to do was just spring out from the shield, already having that information of the audio and just looking through his shield to go spring up at the right time to go win that 1-for-1, and everything changed in terms of the dynamic there once we just saw that complete failure by Akron to remove just one person throughout that entire defensive hold. So great job by Kettering for at least capitalizing on the mistakes of Akron. But you would think on their map pick, they would really have their stuff together moving forward in that first half. But so far, that just hasn't been true.
Well, generally the color point I would come in here would be Akron have got all these LMGs. They've got just pretty much infinite magazines to dump forward. This time it was defensive LMGs. It was the one man with Tachanka. He was able to hold down the fort and the flashbangs. It's just... I almost say it's inexcusable for Akron to have so many, to have players in fine positions. It's just a moment where you kind of need to slow it way down, call a reset. It's 4v2. It's playoff, guys. Let's try to calm down. It's our own map pick. We don't need to go super crazy here.
Well, at least this time we've got Arv here on the sledge, so there are more grenades in their pocket. That could maybe help with the shield presence. There's only one, though, and not that much util. Once again, it's going to be more or less that roam presence and how active Kettering can remain without getting punished. We see a lot of punishment dealt on towards Amplify, but he can survive and live inside of the tub for a little while longer. But I believe JetCon, he's got his number on lockdown, and we could maybe see that first pick going true. And yep, that will be correct. IMAT will finish off the weakened Jaeger, and that's already the opening duel as a win for Akron once again.
They've got it started, just as they did in the previous round, but we saw how that one panned out. They even roared up to that huge advantage. Made pressure from below. It's good on the money. Arv to stack another body. Bucka was successful the last time he tried the solar flank. And from what I see right now, Akron aren't totally aware of this looming pressure that the Vigil will provide. And Bucka strikes there onto Arv. Nearly got taken down in his own right. And so the Vigil will commensurately play a little more passive down in that trophy area.
No more impact grenades either, so the Vigil cannot play for anti-plant. And speaking of the plants, actually going down by Hennessy right now. JetCon finishes off Derp, and now finding a second, just holding down the M1 key, leaving just Bucka left to stand. And we already are full aware of his position currently. He's still stuck in trophy, and IMAT will put him out of his misery. The first round, finally in this first half, for Akron Esports, as they do a solid job of not only establishing that opening pick, but making sure the defense, at least in terms of that roam game, could not come back to the site to be more problematic for him.
I think a much better eventuality of what that attack was supposed to look like in the first round. They got the wall open. Yes, they still got flanked, but nothing else worked out for Kettering. And maybe you can say that's better and well thought out positioning for Akron, knowing, okay, we've got Amplified, we've got this Jaeger, he's stuck in the tub. You could kind of nitpick that for the German operator and say, yeah, he did get a little too aggressive. I don't think jumping in the tub was the right call. He was trying to play behind his utility, though. He was looking for that angle because Akron, to be honest, Master Bedroom, not a very well playable location. They managed to neutralize the player in Hut. Before that, got rid of the Jaeger. They disabled all the positions. They did everything right as compared to last time. It was Kettering who moved up maybe beyond the positions to win the round.
Heading back into Barn Gaming, we did see a relatively long hold on this top floor. Eventually that fallback did happen. Kettering, like I mentioned earlier, did not overstay their welcome, but still having someone as impactful as Arv to still have a few moments of breath to actually get that hammer down and spot out a couple of people that were over aggressive during that anchor presence. It did allow a small glimmer of hope for Akron. If we see somebody as important like Arv actually be dropped as that opening pick for Kettering, this could be a completely different round, because only based off the fact that Kettering had that man advantage were they able to survive the entourage once things worked down into that middle floor. And one of the main reasons how that man advantage was established by Akron was based on the fact that Arv found two huge picks after he had the vertical pressure established.
KU running it back with the very same strategy they had brought in the previous iteration, and it'll be on Akron to just play a little bit more cognizant of what this strategy is and not try to get too crazy in reaction to it. Let's move slow, not too slow, but patient enough to get rid of all the right pieces of utility. I'm kind of interested to see what Derp might do in this wrinkle roam over by this master bedroom side, because from Akron's positions right now, the one thing they're really lacking is any serious pressure from piano or office. And that would, in normal circumstances, allow the player at Chimney to be way more mobile. However, good utility placement from Akron disables that position, forcing pretty much the first player down from Kettering.
That is one of the best things I like about Akron's attacks when they do it to Shally is they love establishing library presence to remove one of those two vital shields and force a good chunk of Kettering to fall back. That does allow for better isolation on that player in blue, and because nobody was Chimney, there is no chance of a refrag. Arv, that player I mentioned the importance of earlier, is going to win that first gunfight, and now he's got free reign of this top floor besides the flank that's in the pocket of both Derp and I believe Bucket to be here to help him out.
Well, pretty early for a roam, but this could be crucial to winning it, and the Aruni with her punch will let him in. Here steps Derp. I don't think the player by stairs has any idea, and Arv was looking the wrong direction for that play. A full retake of the top floor couldn't have gone any better for the attackers. They've got a Z-ping on this player behind the bar. However, that's really not enough, because getting through that window will be enough of a serious challenge itself. Bucka has rotated back, though. I'm curious what he's doing. They've got a Z-ping up above as well. Perhaps JetCon is going to try to step in for some pressure. Anomaly still holding down all default positions from Kettering right now, and it might be Derp's job to win this round just from his positioning alone in this fight he's about to take with IMAT.
And he expects at least someone to still be up in this top floor, and yeah, Derp will call him out on that. Still have one player actually near the main entrance towards Fireplace. JetCon off screen will actually catch Derp, so things are equalized, but Bucka, still holding this top floor position, is going to try to give JetCon hell and make sure he cannot get much done on that top floor presence.
There's Jobu on another, and Akron quickly have driven this advantage, have dealt with the top floor pressure, and Bucka failing to play with his teammate. I don't want to necessarily say he's to blame here, but things certainly haven't looked great with the call that he's had so far. Hennessy will likely be able to complete the plant, no problem. Jobu below the hatch should be an easy cut. Bucka will look for it though, and oh no, he loses it to the ARX as the attacker will prevail in that battle. A good retake, really strong idea from Kettering. I love the execution. However, you kind of need to realize, okay, excuse me, sorry. Okay, if you lose this control, things are going to go terribly wrong. And we saw what happened when they did.
I think, especially for that top floor retake, if we had seen Bucka and Dirt play more together, that could have been a very different story. If we had that instant refrag and Bucka was already inside of Library, he might have been able to actually catch Habana while still running back to go plant deep, because they figured, well, Bucka is the only one left alive. We've got full site control. Let's try to plant farther away from the hatches, though we cannot get caught off guard via that vertical establishment done by the Aruni. So that was a good play by Akron to really force the hand of Bucka. But again, if we had that cohesion by both Derp and Bucka, it could have been potentially a completely different story, and we might have forced another 1v1, which has been a very similar storyline here in this first half, which could have potentially given Bucka the upper hand because of how low we were in terms of time management.
2 successful rounds from Akron in a row. Let's see if they can make it a third. So far, getting the bomb down in both of these 2 rounds so far, I think really speaks to just the structure that they've came in with. Things have been a lot better. Haven't lost that entry engagement in a little while, and because of that, things are going a little smoother. They're not seeing Kettering with that ability to kind of come back in and upset things. I think the round that we just saw there with the retake up above is maybe the one difference, the one exception to that fact, but even still, it wasn't something that forced Akron to get all crazy and resort to that earlier sort of rounds 1 through 3 mentality where they get a little too ahead of themselves. Maybe they felt out their opponent, and that's what these last 2 rounds in a row are.
Heading into round number 6, we have a slightly different changeup by Akron. Instead of actually wanting to go for that solo clear, they are starting on the opposite side of the map. They want to go for more of that default structure of getting that library control and already having IMAT. Try to work his way a little bit lower into main and maybe try to remove people such as Bucka. That way he cannot be holding those long angles in a trophy, and trying to rotate back in the site to be more of a problem. But he's already done that, as the call must have been given by somebody on his team that he needs to go be inside a piano for more of this default take. And now to change his position currently is actually Dirt, but we managed to have Arv win their second opening duel of this first half to give Akron the advantage once again.
Bucka been a pretty quiet player since his earlier success on the Vigil, but Dirt for a trade, not something that's been entirely consistent from Kettering when they find themselves in that opening death spot so far, and Dirt with great gun skill there. The 1.5x optic obviously helping him in that fight to take down another player, and he gets back to the site easy as pie with the ability to hop up those hatches. Gonna act as if somewhat of a ghost here for Akron, who still are a bit worried about the presence that might be or might not be inside kitchen and dining.
currently allowing the stall to happen because of the high mobility in the hands of Derp. They really have no clue where he could be playing at. And although he has located back up to the site, again, Akron, they've got no idea of that. Thankfully, though, they can actually try to play for that grenade presence underneath. It's not going to find them anything, but it does make sure that Kettering have to be a bit more cautious, as now with those holes being opened up, Arv could have some sort of overwatch in that first floor, but still not able to find that kill will remain to have Kettering in this lead for the last 50 seconds.
Something has gone terribly wrong, though. They failed to clear this Electroclaw. The grenades couldn't get it. I believe it's on the shelf, and that's just going to force them to go for a really dry execute here. Never going to be easy, but count in Hennessy to step up for two. JetCon's got one as well. It's Anomaly left, sort of a dog backed into a corner here. It's got a C4 still left. It won't matter. JetCon for the LMG. Akron work it out in the 3 versus 4, and you have to stay a big props to the Fragmite there for getting in, getting his 2 kills, and really softening up the Kettering defense.
Yeah, everyone just kind of tunnel visioning out on the piano doorway when you still need to worry about office door. It may seem a bit challenging to try to walk through that whole funnel. Essentially, it's such a thin door in comparison to how most people are going to open up that double wall leading into offices. But that was kind of the main reason why it completely threw a wrench in the machine there for Kettering. They were just expecting everybody to funnel in either through the piano window or the piano double door, and that isn't exactly what happened. We still had JetCon just waltzing in through there, but that's because they have the LMG. They can just hold down M1 and force Kettering to play more passive, giving more map control to the attacking side in order to maybe get that plant down. And although that one part of the equation did fail, they were just able to brute force their way into sight. And again, because of the Fragmite and JetCon, they completely cleaned house in order to equalize at the end of that first half.
All right, well, it's an even ball game for either roster. I would have a feeling that Akron are going to continue this momentum that they've been on so far. The way that they played has been, I think, a little smarter. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. They just haven't been doing, so many foolish things, like sending a player in before the drone, trying to go a little bit too fast when you really could slow it down here and try to play the pace. If we're going off of my earlier comparison, Chalet and Cafe, generally teams have trouble on Cafe because their pacing is wrong. My worst fear of the pacing issues on Cafe is when teams are too slow, right? And they stay up on the hatch the whole time. They're just up on the rooftop waiting for something to happen. It's a little different. Maybe Chalet is a bit more horizontally involved, but there still is a lot of questions about how much time you're spending to accomplish certain goals.
You already have Kettering getting a good chunk of some slight map control. We've got Bucka out near the double doorway. Derp is just about ready to enter that top floor once someone is there to drone him out. That will be Anomaly's job to do that. And then they can begin going for more of that standard clear, heading out to the top of blue, probably leading into offices, and maybe having the Sophia player of Bucka actually try to utilize some of their util as well to maybe help out with the presence leading in through mezzanine to, once again, make sure they only have to worry about one or the other shield, and that can just allow for a smoother clear of this top floor. But we still have to wait and see Kettering properly set up 110% before we can fully guarantee they'll get this clear off with no hitches.
Well, I like the Twitch as sort of a thought towards replacing the Flores. So far, hasn't really done, I think, as much as you would want it to. With only one ADS gone, you still have lots of utility to fall back on. And Papa P delivered to the grave via Arv. That will be his third entry pick in a row. It's going to make the job of Kettering so much more difficult, not to mention the fact that Derp is now out of grenades and Bucka, left with only one remaining piece of lifeline utility. The fact that Akron are not off of this top floor, I think, is a terrible omen.
And not having anybody apply pressure near that library window until now, that was Bucka who completely rotated across the map to be in this key location. That is, yeah, like you said, Reese, a red flag. And all that Arv has to really do here is just sit here, play to die, and waste even more time because we still have that top floor position here by the defense, like you had mentioned, and they still have the man advantage. Now doubled up as IMAT shuts down Anomaly. That puts us in a 5-on-3.
Well, we saw what happened last time. The offense were in a terrible disadvantage, but they did manage to secure 4 versus 3. Things not looking so swimmingly here. Watch out for that Frost. Amplify's watching the wrong angle. Oh! Doesn't matter that he's watching the wrong angle. He still got the shot, and Hennessy fails to sink it in against the Twitch. Out still from Ego Balcony. 20 seconds to go, though. It's a long period of time to find so many kills when you're that player and you're just sort of waiting for something to happen. JetCon will fall back to Bucka. DPS, no, the Frost Mat. Late game, that'll happen when you fail to clear the majority of this utility. And Hennessy still fighting for the pre-fire. Finally, the Frost goes down, but it's 1 versus 2, and there's not enough time left. It'll be an easy closeout via Akron, and JetCon camping below the hatch for yet another 4 in a row from Akron.
And like you mentioned, 4 in a row for Akron, 3 opening duels in a row for just Arv, out of all people. Someone on the sledge who it can be very risky to lose that kind of person at the beginning of your round. And now the Aruni as well, which that exact same moniker cannot be coined, still playing in that blue position to actually try to get aggressive and force less utility in the pocket of Kettering. But I think the biggest issue for Kettering last round was not the fact that they lost the man advantage early on, it was their general positioning. Bucka didn't do all that much near the main balcony, near that double window, and then he took way too long to establish that pressure inside a library. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we have less teams opting to go for office and fully clearing out that top floor from the northern side is because it just takes too much time, and you can't even guarantee you remove every part of that top floor extension. Whereas if you start out with library, you can kill somebody playing in there directly, and you can open up that mezzanine wall if you have a ranged heart destructor, which gets rid of 2 of the 3 positions that a defender can hold, and that just leads to a simple isolation and most likely a fallback on that player in blue.
Well, you mentioned a bit risky to get the sledge involved on the entry fight, and this sort of takes me back to a question I've kind of been asking myself for a little while, maybe a little more towards the philosophical side of Siege, but I think, you know, in metas past 2 or 3 years ago, the entry was the entry. It was, you know, your Ashe and Jaeger, when that was defined as who the entry was. It didn't really matter what utility they had. They were just the entry. I mean, Ashe had breaching rounds. She still had utility. She had flashes as well. We would take that as soft destruction and burn. Nowadays, Sledge has got soft destruction. He's got grenades. You can bring burn, though you're a little foolish to do so. I mean, any operator can really entry. It's just, you know, you have to take responsibility if you die and lose util.
Yeah, and especially with Arv now being more on that relaxed position on the Aruna, you already have all your util placed, and you've got a good gun to at least click on heads at a good rate of fire. Once again, getting rid of Amplify, someone who's been rather silent in this matchup here for the second half, and we've got JetCon as well getting active, spots out Derp, so it's a 5 versus 3 once again for Akron, and really no rebuttal just yet by Kettering. They still have a good amount of their player base actually outside of the building, wondering what just happened to their Finka and Twitch because they're already on camera duty in the first minute.
And I think part of that comes down to Bucka and Papa P just not being there for the rest of their roster. They have never really, to me, had the counter punch where Akron come in with the opener. It generally will stay like that for a serious part of the round. The immediacy of the refrag is something that has to change because you're letting Akron just sit there and fester and wait for you. And Kettering are on a really slow boil. Anomaly will get one back. He's the hard breacher, though. I need to see some activity right now from the soft breach duo.
I mean, still outside, now having to reposition, almost swallowing their pride as they now have everybody stacked up in solar. Nobody is there to go in a late rotate, play for grenades. They more or less just kind of have to funnel. Luckily, we do have one of those 2 back walls actually opened up for soft destructions. That can be some sort of line of sight, but it's not really favoring the offense. What is favoring Kettering, though, is the fact that Bucka has, in fact, equalized to at least put us in a 3-on-3.
Well, Bucka coming alive and Anomaly still steady as she goes on the Hibana. 2 versus 1. Lots of utility left for the Smoke. It might not matter, though, as Smoke is going to have to use his gun first and maybe utility later. He'll do that onto Bucka, but steps into the angle of the Hibana. Marking a triple kill there for Anomaly as a huge victory for Kettering. Maybe puts them back in a certain place of confidence because their ego was looking a little bruised with that rotation.
And it's similar to what we had happen a few rounds ago for actually Kettering, funny enough. They kind of got over aggressive on their defense and didn't really force the offensive side to really approach them on their own terms, and that allowed, in this position, Kettering actually to win some of those important gunfights to then equalize and then also get the man advantage, as Akron were like, well, we now need to try to go for some sort of refrag, and it just was not meant to be, apparently. So despite the fact we had a lot of heavy isolation there by Kettering in the beginning parts of round number 8, they were able to all group up together and have the same idea in mind of we just have to hop in the bomb site and hope we can win these gunfights and go 1-for-1, which is exactly what happened in order to now put ourselves in a 4v4 rather than actually a 5v3, favoring Akron in terms of the round count.
The reattempt here, Akron just going to maybe slow it down a little bit, try to focus on that late utility. It's always, I think, to me, fellow, to any caster, when you see a smoke die with utility, it doesn't matter if it's end round or if he dies on the roam, there are questions that are raised. Why wasn't that utility used earlier? More so even for that solar area, which is just a big box. I mean, look at it here. It's a rectangle. It's got a single staircase and 2 windows that lead into it. If you smoke off that main entry point, it keeps the attackers away. And I just almost wonder what Jobu was doing to not have used them any earlier.
You don't have to wait until the last 30 seconds to start throwing out those smokes either. You can use them a bit earlier, and then that also allows your teammates to rotate properly, play in that trade position, and then kind of force Kettering in more of a do or die position. Once again, forcing them to make that first move is a big part of allowing the defense to kind of get the upper hand in a lot of those altercations, especially when you have that time to go reposition and make sure it's 2 lines of sight against the offense rather than just 1.
More and more solar pressure, go with what you know. Haven't had, barring that one Akron sort of rush in attack, any serious execute over towards the office side so far. Been entirely a northernly game for this office and master objective. There's Highbat again. Been a familiar refrain. Derp goes down. Derp has kind of kept himself to more a second death. I don't know if that's good or bad, but at least he hasn't been the one who dies in the first fight a lot of times here. But for your Finka to be gone, Bucka had a good little spirited move in the previous round that will not come to fruition in number 9. And Akron, once again, for what feels like the 80th time this game, come into an entry pick and they stack another body on top of it.
Quite literally the exact same position, a bit of deja vu, as I guess Akron were aware that the early game was a bit weak by Kettering. They just kind of threw bodies at the problem when it was completely unnecessary when they already had the 5 versus 3. Having Arv play a bit aggressive inside the bathroom, expecting this person to go out for the swing, but the alibi hologram actually gets in the way of Arv, allowing Amplify to one-up him, but thankfully JetCon is here. The pings are there, but not the swing at the right moment. Still keeping things in a 4 versus 3, but still, Akron, they have the advantage. They just need to stall out, but look at a beautiful run-out by IMAT. No air jab there to deny him, and now that leaves only Amplify, and like I mentioned earlier, his position is well known because of those Gemini pings.
That'll certainly be a round to look at in the match review later. I think there should have been a Claymore there. Maybe there was. Maybe he just ran through it and we sort of had a siege moment. A doable execute from the disadvantage now looks to be just about as impossible as they come. Amplify not even in the building. Still peering through windows, looking for ones, looking for any kind of way that he could break loose and get in. Jobu, again, has 3 toxic canisters remaining. And it just must feel like the most undoable situation. As soon as you hop in that window, I mean, there's no choice. You're going to get seen. You're going to have to do something. He chooses to shoot it. Unfortunately, that decision earns him a death by Jaeger.
Now the round advantage back in the favor of Akron, and that was a very solid call to not only go the exact same bomb site, but to have IMAT go on the run out because he figured it's going to be the exact same setup. We're in a 5 versus 3 once again, and now all that Kettering have to fall back on is that solar position. And with there being no flank watch, no air jabs on the board, all that IMAT really has to do is just go for that run out, which is exactly what happened. He found 2 beautiful kills, and that only left Amplify left to stand. With his position known to outside of West Main balcony, it was just a simple reposition by Akron once again, and just forcing Amplify to try to hop into the building and hope they can get isolation kills, which is really the exact opposite of what happened. And now we can see those rewards reaped out by Akron because they get to go back to this site of Bar and Gaming and try to hope that Kettering don't fall in the same mistakes that they did last time the site was in play.
Well, I'm going to come in here for a second. Excuse the play-by-play brain, but you would think isolation generally, as an attacker, that comes from using drones and putting, pinch pressure on your opponent, not just kind of coming in a solo one-on-one. Is that sort of symptomatic of why Kettering are kind of, behind the ball here?
I would say so, because again, we've seen the opening duel be won by Akron plenty of times, all the way from round number 4 past round number 9. It's been IMAT and the ARV show for the most part. And I think a big thing of that is, like you mentioned, the isolation and the fact that there's nothing there to get a refrag at all. We've seen Derp just solo clearing with the Finka, which, don't get me wrong, the LMG, it's a great gun, and Finka is a strong operator in the current meta. But taking that 50-50 risk it's just something that doesn't sit well with me, especially when, again, you don't have anybody there to maybe put things in a 4 versus 4. So trying to rely on the fact that you're going to just flat out outduel somebody is not a good idea, especially when you need so much of the map to be cleared out and a lot of that util to be quite important for Dirt because you don't have many frags to actually waste away. And he's one of those main two ops who has those grenades in pocket.
It was Arv who actually led the charge last time we were here on this gaming objective. Akron, one thing they desperately need to improve on is just, try to keep that up. Try to hold your positions and not let Kettering kind of come in against you because, as we just talked about there, Kettering have lacked some of the elements of coordination they really had at the first 3 rounds. I think that was probably the highlight for them of this match as it's gone so far. But some things haven't worked out for them this game, such as Papa P's play in its entirety. He's 0-7, I believe, since the rehost. And it's just been a slugfest for the rest of Kettering, but not really involving Papa P, and sometimes not involving Bucka either. It's been 3 hitters for Kettering and nothing much else beyond it. There's Amplified, though. On to Hennessy. Finally, a trade. This is looking a little more promising than usual for Kettering, especially for Arv. Oh my goodness, what a shot there on the Amplify. Maybe things aren't so good for Kettering as they still have yet to clear out the Saruni.
And we've got 2 people just sitting out of library, yet they decide not to push. Derp finds something as he just gets aggressive, but having no one to back him up, Arv gets away with his life. It's still an advantage here for Akron, and I don't even think they're fully aware of the player of IMAT. It looks like I might be wrong, though, on that call. Derp will now try to shut him down, but he'll be allowed to fall back as well, and now the site presence is fully in the court of Akron as there's only 30 seconds left to kill. And Bucka, where are you going, brother? Why are you on the roof?
What? I just don't. Some of these rotations, they just don't make any sense right now for Kettering and are just so far unsynchronized that the rest of the roster is put in a position where they can't make up for it. Finally, we've got a round where Jobu has actually used some of his smoke utility. Kettering have forced that out of him. They've also forced their way into one. Dirk dropped into the site. I don't know what the play was there. Why would you try to double up on it when your teammate is on the other side of the map? Bucka will try to run in with the pistol. Obviously, it doesn't work out because Akron had the crossfire there against the bar door and mark it up as another Akron round. They're out of control this game.
I really cannot believe we had Bucka try to go on that roof rotate with half a minute left and then go on the drone last second. That I did actually enjoy, but I not waiting to go in there with a synchronized play by both your LMG players. That was the problem I had with going on that drone because he sat all the way in the back of piano expecting there to be, expecting somebody to be there, at the top of blue. But no, the Mozzie had completely fell back to the site to help out the rest of their team. If not the site, then I believe it was the bottom of blue stairs actually to force the hatch play, which fell into the strength of Akron once again, still having that site area on full lockdown. So for Kettering, they just need to get more involved in the round. We can't have just Derp trying to get aggressive. We need to have Bucka there to back him up, especially with that LMGE. That's a gun that forces a lot of respect out of the defense, yet we've been seeing Bucka just trying to hold these long angles and expect somebody to peek and get over aggressive, which really hasn't been the case, especially in the positions that Bucka has been holding in the second half.
Things have maybe returned to the game plan for Akron as far as what they were hoping to do for Chalet. Kettering, I imagine, are really hoping that they can at least maybe force into overtime here. You want to fight back. You want to kind of get some of that earlier momentum that you've had because the energy has been, to a certain degree, kind of sapped out of the Kettering roster. Some of the things they do just don't make sense. Some of the things they do are good in theory, but are very poorly executed. And it just begs the question, what can get them back on track to kind of start to play this a little bit more, together, to work with their teammates, to try to get some better trades. I think the comms maybe could be a part of the reason why things aren't so good. And, again, I'm going to keep hitting on it. Papa P, he just can't be counted on to get in any sort of fight and claim a life.
Well, at least in terms of general positioning, things are much better by Kettering. We've got Bucka getting active, which that I love to see because it's something I was harping on him quite harshly for earlier. And then we've got the rest of the entourage here by Kettering trying to go in through library, get that mezzanine pressure, and then start to open up the back office wall. There is currently a wall actually opened up here, which allows IMAT to poke and prod at the opposition for the time being, almost gets a cheeky pixel angle onto somebody, but apparently it's just not able to fully connect on towards Amplify. So a decent stall being established, and yet we still see plenty of people actually swinging out against IMAT, although we know for a fact he's going to try to win those, and that actually happens. Amplify now dead to rights. He'll be forced to go be on the flank watch, and JetCon now getting explosive as well. It's once again a 5-on-3 favoring Akron for the 80th time, and now it's even doubled down as things turn into a 5 versus 2 with Kettering at a massive disadvantage.
And Papa P is still on the rooftop. Buck on the window, clearly going nowhere, and so too will this round for Kettering. It's looking like things have wrapped up on Chalet. Kettering had those 3 rounds to start the game. They looked real good. However, they failed to get any serious follow-through. You've got the diffuser stuck in a spot where it's really just going to be an unthinkable job, and Papa P will probably live out the last minute of this round from up on the rooftop. A staggering portion of this game coming down to Akron, making Kettering just look something beyond uncomfortable. I mean, the way that they played was some rounds kind of scared, some rounds they would try something, it wouldn't work, and there would just not be a rotation. You can't say that for Akron. When they encounter something that went wrong, they would fix it. Usually they would fix it just by seeing IMAT and JetCon race in and get a bunch of kills. That is kind of the modus operandi for this Akron team. Kettering haven't had that, and it's a big reason why Chalet is going to come to a close here in favor of Akron. So, as Papa P continues to outlast, yay, he finally got a kill. But there's a word we use for these kills, fellow. Impactless. So that's pretty much all it's going to be here. JetCon has been DBNO'd. Papa P will end this round, not even on the same floor of the objective.
And well, didn't really have all that well of a clear come into fruition for the attacking side of Kettering, as they could not even deal with the extension against people like IMAT, who were just getting hyper aggressive. And yeah, you mentioned this just briefly, having people still outside of the building, on the roof, Papa P in particular, and just not everybody getting involved. We just saw that round kind of just die down in a very quick whimper, I guess, by the side of Kettering. I would have loved to have seen more of that vertical pressure near the middle floor inside a fireplace to maybe help out, maybe look for those Kaid claws, or having somebody out in the main balcony, not having someone on top of the roof, just looking down at an angle no one's clearly peeking, because your teammates have already cleared out library and like jungle, for example. No one's going to be peeking from that position, and I could guarantee no one's trying to spawn peek in from piano because they don't want to get wide swung, even when there's coverage there by IMAT in office.
I think that's a big part of something that describes in a more bigger picture what went wrong. It's just Kettering not knowing which angles were going to be ones to worry about, and that's a worrying thing to say for Chalet, for them to really have had those first 3 rounds with some authority, and Akron just, whoop, they get the map, they get it over with, and they are looking damn good going into the next map. However, Oregon and Chalet, apples to oranges. We'll see if the Akron momentum carries over, or if Kettering can calm it down and come back in with more confidence. We'll see you after the break.
Welcome back, everybody, to the R6 Collegiate Championship in the quarterfinals. We are already ready to actually hop into Oregon here between Akron and Kettering, where we did see a phenomenal start by the side of Kettering, but they kind of fell short towards the middle and end parts of map number one. Hopefully that can actually be remedied going into Oregon because that is their map pick, but I still feel like it's going to be an absolute challenge to try to outmaneuver Akron to make sure they don't go to a third map.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring Akron to a lot of maps in the current pool. I'd like to make a note as well. We forgot to mention this and touch on it during the veto phase. For the Collegiate Championship and the rest of the playoffs, we're going to be sticking with the old map pool that we have, the 7 map pool, as opposed to the 9 map pool, which is currently active in the other parts of the R6 esports circuit. I believe the change happens for the wild card tournament and on from there, so we'll get to see what these teams look like on the newer maps. But as long as we don't have coastline, we will not have any problems with that because Coast isn't played. Teams aren't scrimming coastline. I mean, trying to get a scrim on coastline right now must be pretty difficult. I remember that with, actually, funny story here for old collegiate tournaments when we swapped out Theme Park. It was still in the pool for a lot of those leagues, and teams were having just a bunch of difficulty getting a scrim on theme because it was still in the pool. You still had to play it.
Man, I even remember when I first started casting, Border was still in the comp pool, so teams would actually scrim on that map too. That was a lot of fun. I think that was my second ever time casting back in the console days, and glad to see it back in the map pool for most places. However, in the Collegiate Championship, this is not one of those places. But Oregon, that's probably going to be in the comp pool for quite some time. Everybody, at least in terms of teams, they love this map. Maybe us here in the prod booth aren't that big of fans because of the amount of repetition and monotony that we see when we go to this map, but it's still a solid map to go over, and because a lot of teams know what they're doing when we go here, it does allow for very close matches to be kind of a constant when we go here. So I'm hoping we're not going to see kind of like that relatively one-sided affair, technically a 7-1 because we saw 3 runs in a row by Kettering and then nothing else after that. I'm hoping to see potentially overtime between these two teams on Oregon.
Well, we didn't really touch on the operator view, so I'll quickly clean that up for us. You've got Valkyrie coming through, Mav and Cade. They almost sort of cancel each other out, but with Flores ban, Wamai is up. So with Valkyrie and Wamai, you know, the defense are in a pretty decent spot here, and you've got 2 intel operators in this first composition from Akron, with the Valk being joined by a Maestro. Always a solid operator, that Italian with his Alda wielding it on the basement. Jaeger is really trying something here. Arv was the entry leader pretty much on the last map, and you know, that should have probably been a kill there for Bucka. Chose a bad time to reload. In the meanwhile, though, Derp will make up for it with one onto IMAT up on the 2nd floor.
And at the beginning, we did have Kettering, like I mentioned, remain quite strong against Akron, especially with Derp getting those opening duels as a win, rather than being first killed by someone on the side of Akron. But then when we had Akron kind of get a read on how Kettering likes to play, they were able to adapt at a relatively decent pace, only losing around that first half. Towards the beginning, only 3 rounds, and then 4 in total towards the second half of Chalet. But still, at least we're seeing in that early pressure, Kettering is going to reign supreme. They're going to get that opening duel, not have to worry about that top or middle floor presence anymore, unless a flank is afoot. But so far, that's not going to be the predicament currently by Akron. They still want to hold this basement floor as long as they can, because of course, it's the bomb site.
Were this to be 5 versus 3, I think things would maybe be a little bit more favorable towards that Kettering side. I don't want to say anything too definitive yet, that having cleared an early roamer, things are going to go well for them to the finish line. But you've at least gotten rid of IMAT, who we know to be quite explosive, who can kind of come in and touch down on a few different topics. The wall, though, looks a little different than normal. Usually here at Bosco, we've kind of got that left side reinforced with head holes on the right side. They've actually elected to go for prone holes on this time, which I'm curious how Kettering will react to that, being that you're not really going to have very solid coverage if you try to step in for Freezer.
We've got maybe the element of surprise, at least by Hennessy, depending on how the drone game works out here for the offense, or if they get too tunnel visioned on JetCon. This might be a huge play for Hennessy to completely shut out that Freezer position by Kettering and force basically a funnel to go down by the offense.
Now as Bucka collects onto 1, there's 40 seconds for Kettering to make their play, and things really have eventuated out for them. 5 versus 2. The Alda is still up playing from this position inside Freeze. They know the Fink is there, but Hennessy misses on the pre-fire. Job, who's still holding firm. Can he really do it for 4? At least he's got 2. But as he steps out from Secret, he gets blasted by Bucka. Kettering have some solid form in the first round of their own pick.
Thankfully able to instantly remove that roam pressure and not really stall themselves out by that much. They had a bunch of time to kind of form themselves up in the right way, just take their moment to catch their breath, drone out everything properly, and go for a lot of really clean 1-for-1s, especially having Akron kind of force themselves to fall back when there were already the hatches opened up, especially inside of E-Box, which caught the Jaeger off guard, having somebody already try to play near the back stairs to make sure some parts of Pillar and Highway were on lockdown. There were a good chunk of positions held by Kettering that did really force the hand of Akron to just remain uncomfortable and kind of force them to either over-aggress to try to go for a 1-for-1 or try to hightail it out of there before someone ended up catching them in a bad spot to win another gunfight. But it ended up being the latter option, with Kettering actually winning a lot of those early gunfights and having a very good round to start off here on one of the most defender-sided sites of Laundry and Supply.
Well, to connect Oregon with the earlier Chalet, I did want to note that Kettering had the stronger game plan in the early match of that game as they came out to that 3-0 lead, but then they faltered and Akron really surged upon their momentum there. Things could very well be the same here. Maybe Akron needs some time to get adjust. The way that you have your playstyle oriented on Chalet, not really going to work exactly the same here on Oregon. There are obviously some similarities, but the way that you're going to time things is going to be much different. For Akron, again, they played a lot of that Oryx on the previous map. It was kind of something that was used by both squads. We had a little bit from it from Derp as well, who did use it to kind of evade the coverage. However, ultimately, I want to say that Akron's use of it was probably the more substantial.
Back on the point of Akron here, we actually have the Goyo in the pocket of Jetcom, which is a great way to stall for time, especially in kids where you could almost guarantee that there's going to be someone trying to push in through either deer or near that closet wall, or maybe someone wants to late rotate into either big window or the attic, or not attic area, pardon, but actually the top of white stairs heading into that single doorway. So there are a lot of good positions to just have those Vulcan packs available, and that just wastes a solid 20 seconds flat, and having 4 of those, depending on where exactly everyone's playing at for Kettering, that is just about 80 seconds off the board. And we know how important time management is for an attacking team. So having not only that Goyo, but also the smoke in the pocket of Akron, that could be a good way just to force Kettering to have to push in those dire few moments of the round and really allow Akron to have those crossfires established and just completely deny and execute from fully going underway and blossoming for Kettering.
Things not terribly too productive from Kettering, so aside from having opened up the main breach, they still have a multitude of defenders playing for below. I think Kettering are going to stick to their guns here and probably try a more simple execution. Oh, look at all the utility, even got the extra ADS as well before the Twitch drone was shot. And so this Bolo position, not as well protected as it were previously, could help with an eventual execute from the Kettering side. However, they're still kind of waiting for a couple things to come out. They've got that cross pressure, one in Armory and LMG holding down that angle, with Dirt finding a kill. His LMG poised outside of Big. Hennessy's down. It's LMGs versus LMGs so far in the early game, and this one has started to get a little bit more towards that late period. Kettering have a 4 versus 5 that they can sort of smother down here, but Arv is still a player with a lot of potential.
We need to still worry, of course, about maybe IMAC going in on that flank, but it is only that middle floor presence left.
What?
Derp, a great play, denying the vert coverage. IMAC has to swing from the top of Armory stairs and just gets dumpstered by Anomaly. A very strong way to now have a second round here for Kettering, and despite all of the util that was available to them and the actual vert to stop anyone from hopping in through white or double window, for example, it just did not work out in the slightest for Akron, and because of that, Kettering take a second in a row.
2 gnarly kills to finish off that round there for Kettering. And again, the momentum, their roster looking like they've found the sauce in order to defeat Akron. But 2 rounds on the attack. I suppose that is a little bit more kind of nominal than what you would say for Chalet, which is a map a lot of times does go for the attackers. When you've got Flores and when you've got Wamai, though, both of those 2 operators banned, I like to take up the opinion that Chalet kind of does sort of cut down the middle, similar to Cafe. But here on Oregon, the offense really has to set the tempo. They have set the tempo in a way that Akron have felt maybe a little uncomfortable with. They tried to play below, they tried to play a little bit more kind of off the site, and unfortunately, the off-site play just didn't do anything. It was entirely unsuccessful, and you hate to be that player down in security. We've got a great person with us in the booth. His name is Nova. He's our observer, and boy, does he not miss that one.
Well, heading back into laundry and supply, I would definitely love to see Akron actually go for more of a middle floor extension with the Castle and Rooney, because that does force yourself to go in more of a team play kind of aspect, and that doesn't allow Derp just to go for those one for ones on the attack, which it may have caught him lacking on Chalet, but he definitely seems much more comfortable on this side of Oregon, especially for the attacks. So forcing him to go for more than one gunfight at a time could be a way to at least get rid of that powerhouse in the side of Kettering and maybe allow for more time to be stalled, because we know that Kettering in the past kind of weren't the best at getting those key positions acquired at a good time frame. But so far in the first half, they have done everything in the opposite of that department. They've been doing a really good job of being able to remove those key roamers and then just slowly flush their way down into the basement floor almost seamlessly, as if nothing ever even happened on that top and middle floor, and they were just already beginning to pressure that basement.
Last time we played Basement, your entry death was IMAT playing for Dorms Control. He's stepped down from the second floor to instead play on the first. I think this is the right call. You don't really need to stay up above. Maybe you let the attackers get somewhat of a false sense of security by securing control up above and then moving below as the second step of that plan. Because if Kettering are committed to taking the top control, it's going to force somebody to come off of drones, and it's going to cause a little bit more kind of, resources to be devoted towards that control. Akron are going to play from this realm, and I'm really interested to see. IMAT so far has not yet been drone, what he could do on the flank to shut down Kettering, to slow them down even more so, because that's been the trouble so far. Kettering are kind of letting this one slip by, but a C4 from JetCon. Not even IMAT in that early fight. Derp had no way to react to that.
And there it is, the adaptability. We knew for at least Akron, they were expecting that exact same play to happen by Kettering, and they really thought they got the top floor control for three. Well, think again, because we had a nitro cell at the ready by JetCon to win that first fight. And I think we are fully aware of IMAT's position. Yeah, Bucka's just waiting for that person to actually unprone. They could maybe have somebody go around a small tower and go for a wall bang. That would take a lot of time. And because there's only a minute left, that would be problematic. And Bucka, almost checking through the wrong direction, will still be able to win that gunfight against IMAT to at least equalize, but only a minute left to spare. And we still have Kettering trying to open up the back hatches. This could be an easy way to allow that time management to actually be the biggest fault here for Kettering, despite the fact they have equalized.
You'll see a lot of value come out of the smoke in this composition now, as he's survived for a long time, and Kettering have devoted a huge portion of this round towards just clearing out what was JetCon and IMAT, playing sort of from that western side off of the realm. Hennessy has a grenade come towards him. It does a little bit of damage, but nothing that's really going to be much of consequence here. 30 are to go. And you've got still Kettering just sort of holding, just sort of waiting. Kettering haven't accomplished much. Papa P is looking over towards the hatch in an easy angle. That's a good one in from Bucka. Makes this look a little more palatable, but Arv still in this pressure spot. Doesn't have yet a grenade on his position. That could be the way that Bucka wins this round. However, he dies before he gets any utility into the bout. Kettering finally starting to realize, hey guys, we've got to make a move. Papa P gets in for one, but Anomaly's got a toxic canister. He simply doesn't have enough health to cross the fray, and so he'll have to live out the round at the bottom of the main stairs.
Much better roam overall by Akron, still having that small element of surprise, especially with the Nitro Cell out by JetCon, and, maybe IMAT trying to be proned behind the couch near a default plane of dining room, but kind of giving up some of that top floor control kind of for free was a much better option, especially when you don't fully need to have that second floor in your pocket as a defender, especially for the laundry position. I liked how we had Akron more willing to play for the fallback and fully try to hold down the fort inside of the objective room, but also still wasting plenty of time to really have that stall potential thrive against Kettering. And now because of that, they'll finally get around on their defense and force Kettering to almost rethink how they want to approach every attacking round, because if they still need to worry about that roam game and better team play by Akron, I could already imagine seeing more positions where Kettering only have 10 seconds left on the clock, and they kind of have to force themselves to go through the defender util with really little to no options to give them in a good advantage position. Advantage, I should say.
For last time the Kettering had played this one, I I'd say did it in a little bit of a chintzy fashion. They kind of came in very late, and they got incredibly lucky that their player who hopped big window, that was Derp on the Finca, he blasted the player in security below, and the Hibana was incredibly lucky as well to have killed the player who tried to flank up from the main stairs. Hibana got a number of kills in that round, which has been a familiar note. Anomaly, you wouldn't think him the player to go totally crazy. However, JetCon has got a Battle Pass uniform on, I believe, so that's not going to fly. So JetCon will have to live out this round in Purgatory.
Well, that's a way to get your one for free. Love to see that. Do I write it as like Arv getting the opening duel as a win, or should we maybe consider that just JetCon kind of dying off early on? Because I don't really know how you would want to frame that, but either way, it's still a 5v4 favoring Kettering because of the one simple mistake made by JetCon. So unfortunate. And Derp gets an 8 kill as well. Maybe we should count that as the opening duel win instead.
There's your real kill to start things off, but Akron in a rough spot. IMAT will step up to try to alleviate this pressure just a little bit, but he needs to get back to the site sooner rather than later, as Kettering could realize, hey guys, we've only got 2 left on the site, and Jobu isn't really defending from within the objective as well. He's still trying to play the extension. Finally, we'll come back towards the objective, but things aren't looking great for Akron. You hate to have a spot where your player has to die so early on, and Arv has got pressure. He's worried about maybe a grenade from below. A second grenade does eventuate on the follow-up, but Arv swings out and kills Derp, who didn't even land a single shot. He would have only needed the one to get rid of the Jaeger, and it's some mistakes like that that start to worry you for Kettering. They still have time to play with, though.
Kind of jumping the gun there. Now allowing a 3 versus 3. We've got a huge presence near Master to go and try to get that foosball plant. We can maybe see somebody rotate perhaps later on and try to play for that actual plant and all, but so far that won't be the case. Papa P almost catches the Oryx of IMAT, but thankfully he can try to go in this prone position. Actually, Rima dashes around through to now reposition deeper into Addict to make sure he can remain during the fight and stop this eventual push leading in mostly from Deer and Master Wall.
Seems like these smoke toxic canisters are almost endless at this point. They continue to fill the air from Jobu, and the final one goes out, but there's still 45 to play with. And Amplify gets a 1-up onto the Akron roster. Ooh, look at Anomaly as he sort of just sidesteps in through Jobu. Last from Bolo, has the pinch move, has to commit to one fight or the other, and so Kettering will strike to get 3. An even half on their offense already guaranteed. I suppose this is maybe what you would predict for it being their own map selection, but it certainly looks a little better than the disappointment we got on Chalet.
And we still had the stall potential there against Kettering, yet we had, again, this is something that's happened from time to time between both Akron and Kettering, is that slight over-aggression. We didn't have the full acknowledgement of how exactly Kettering were holding specific angles, which kind of forced Akron, when trying to change up where exactly they were playing at, to get caught in a bad line of sight, which actually heavily favored Kettering, and they were able just to pick apart the remnants of that defense. And then the poor player of Jobu just stuck in a rock and a hard space, having to deal with both the people pushing in from the backside and also the people right next to him in Deer Doorway. Did force kind of a make or break spot where it just didn't seem like Jobu was able to win that because the rest of his teammates died in the site, and he was just in a simple 1vx.
Things are starting to get a little more scary here for Akron. I don't know how I just said that. For Akron, as they've got the Vigil and they've got the Oryx there. You know, it happens. I've seen old casters calling them Akron, Akron, Akron. But to get back to the point here, Akron played really well with these defensive specialists. JetCon is 1-4 right now. Not really the position you often expect them to be, and IMAT is there too. Perhaps that's part of the miracle mixture. Oh, I did mention this one thing when we were on the previous map. Akron played, in the early game, was heavily dependent on JetCon and IMAT. Okay, you know, to get this out of the way, yes, they are the entries, so that's kind of the way that this game works. But to see them both fairly ineffectual so far, I think it does sort of tell you a couple things.
At least Arv has been able to fill in some of the blanks, especially towards the mid game in Oregon at the very least. But hey, at least one of those 2 entry players does actually get rid of Papa P, someone who could have been very proactive, especially playing for that vertical, maybe breaking some of the utility if there was any for the actual wall denial. but that's not going to be the case. Still, though, losing out on some of those explosives could have been helpful for breaking the shields, but still having 2 and now 3 grenades in the pocket is going to allow maybe some of those key positions to still be shut down by the offense, but they still got to work some sort of pick, because if they remain to push into the site with a man disadvantage, it's not going to be looking all that pretty, especially when they need to get players to late rotate into positions like white, like the top of big window, and also inside of attic potentially, which could maybe throw somebody off guard. But again, you still need to hold those positions, and doing so with less players is not a good option.
Strange choice for Hennessy to choose throwing the impact grenades through the hole in the wall rather than towards the fan below. And there's your pick back for you, John. Amplify will just walk in through the master bedroom, and an ego challenge later against Jobu. Kettering are back in a 4 versus 4. They're playing a little spread. The Finca over by the small tower stairs is something kind of weird to me. Bucka trying to challenge against Arv. It's not a fight that's going to generate anything other than a 1-for-1 for the Jaeger, who should easily be confirmed out by 1. That's unless Derp gets hassled down here towards the green hall. In fact, a little trick move, as IMAT had pushed him earlier through meeting. There was a flank in progress by JetCon up through green. All of a sudden, this round has just completely gone to tatters. Anomaly is left against 4, assuming Arv eventually gets revived by his teammate and Anomaly on the swing. 2 bodies, DBNO. He could likely confirm this one in attic as well. If he just checks it, maybe doesn't spot the head, the intel quantity will be so huge for these last defenders, though.
1v2. Definitely winnable here. Or the lone player of Anomaly. Ooh, a great shot on a Hennessy. It's only JetCon left to stand. But is the information there? It might not be. Anomaly is expecting a flank. Now checks that. It's clear. Only JetCon left to stand. A hard ping's coming through. JetCon could most definitely win this, but now that both players are aware of each other, this could go either way, but JetCon still wins the fight. The 5th round goes in the books of Akron as they hold on, and still having that roam presence really did pay dividends, because it completely threw Kettering off guard and changed the entire dynamic of that round for Akron to retake the lead.
Sigh of relief for me, and probably one much larger for any of those Akron players who had fed the Hibana. That one got really scary real quick, and it's a great testament to Anomaly as a player. Yes, Akron moved as individuals, but as a player to be known as a clutch minister, what you gotta do is you gotta understand to take what you've got and turn it into a situation that's possible. Hibana almost did it there, and Akron really shaking, but they're still fighting. They've still got that same old Ohio resolve to continue on here for Oregon. And Kettering, they've got their 3, but I'm starting to get Chalet vibes here, where they can only get 3, and they can't press their advantage into anything further more than that.
It is better than, just even the standard 4-2 split, but yeah, I'm kind of feeling the exact same way. Now that Akron have a good idea as to what the main issues are for Kettering, again, that lack of a potential roam clear / flank watch that allowed Akron, to get hyper aggressive and just really shock Kettering to not take that round as breezefully as they probably had expected. And then that just led into a whole other slew of problems. So if we don't see Kettering kind of clean up their act, especially moving into the second half, because they've already done their job in the first half. They've got 3 rounds, like you and I had mentioned. If we don't see their act cleaned up, moving in on their defense, we could definitely see a second win in a row for Akron and potentially no third map on the drawing board in this best of 3.
I don't know if that would necessarily be what you would expect as an outside spectator looking at this game, number 10 seed versus number 5. Akron, we know, have that potential to just unlock, but it's a question of whether they do it on the day. I feel like their Chalet was pretty good. It wasn't anything historical. That's mainly because Kettering just really did not provide a huge amount of fight in them. Things have changed a little bit here on Oregon. We've got a lot more Kettering kind of 1-2 punch. Let's get involved. Let's get some fights.
And the roam already being dealt with. I love the change up by Kettering, not even waiting till the second half to change up their whole play style. They have done such a good job so far of just remaining volatile and already gathering so much intel. And luckily, IMAT does get spotted out as well. That's not a good sign for Akron, of course, but now the option has to be called of whether we see IMAT try to fall back or at least get some sort of kill and hope that there's nobody in sight to go for a trade. If things do turn into a 4 versus 3, that's definitely much better in comparison to the 5-on-3, even worse, the 5-on-2 if IMAT dies here. But the more and more time he waits to go for a play, that just allows even more moments to be gathered up by Kettering to get that drone game back in fashion and fully flush out this low Malusi.
I've seen this play before. It's when we get a lot in Collegiate where you just kind of wait in an area and you force the attackers to come after you. I mean, this is really not a great spot for Kettering to be in with such little time to have a Malusi. I mean, I think the only redeeming factor is that you're up in terms of the man count. However, we know Kettering, they do have trouble sometimes when they come to the execute on pressing their advantages. I framed it earlier as them not being able to pursue advantages in terms of round count, but it's also just like on a one-by-one basis. Down goes Jobu. Kettering don't look like they're going to have too much difficulty closing this one out in that regard, but IMAT has a kill against Amplify. In the meanwhile, though, your only anchor left on the objective has been dispatched. Anomaly wandering through a Banshee will find himself with a clear objective. Let's get the plant down. Let's complete the objective play here. Derp has been DBNO'd. IMAT anticipates some more aggro play from the Iana just on the other side there, and he does get the triple kill. 40 seconds to work with and a clear Z-ping against this attacker, but the deployable shield, too much of an advantage. Doesn't matter what intel you have. It's all reaction time there, baby.
And there we have it. We've got Kettering actually in the advantage 4-2 on the attack. Something that rarely happens, but we really did see complete and utter domination by Kettering, especially in the first 3 rounds. They were just, or at least the first 2 rounds. It wasn't the 3-0 like I had expected them at number 1. We saw them be able to get the opening duels as a win. That's when they were very on top of their game in terms of the roam clear. Then we had some small adaptations by Akron, but really nothing over the top. Potentially, though, we might just see 2 very attacker-favored sides here on Oregon, especially now that we have ARV actually available to pick up the Thatcher. That could allow for instant hard destruction and really a lot of these gadgets here on the board by Kettering to be completely disabled, which allows a lot more to be done by Akron, especially with those grenades, if they bring any with an attacker repick.
I swear if Chief were in this booth right now, he would be strangling you for saying that we're going to get 2 attacker-sided halves. He always gets after me for that. But it's possible. How did we get through the first half with not even really any Thatcher? That's what I'm...
I guess it's because we had Kettering less involved in the hard destruction until the later end of the round, and they wanted to get more of those opening duels. But that wasn't the story every time for Kettering. Yes, that is a little odd because they went for a lot of master clears, which is great for Thatcher, but they never brought him. I guess they weren't comfortable with him as an option, perhaps. I don't know.
I've got a really, cheap cop-out answer. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Finka.
I mean, kind of, but you can, switch somebody else out and still have the Thatcher. You don't need a bunch of nades when you have the EMP. So, yeah, it does seem a little odd. But oh well, could be worse. All right, Bucka. Probably hit the wrong key there. At least he's able to pick back up the nitro cell and get away with his life. That's probably the bigger alternative of that is, yeah, he picked the C4, but at least he's not dead. That could be way worse. So it's still a 5-on-5. And Akron now have control to get that addict wall open up, but they still need to transition later on to open up master, or at the very least go into both white stairs and big window later on.
There's your impact for you from the Thatcher. EMP goes out, and the Bandit batteries will do nothing to stop Jobu here as he goes for the X-Kairos. I actually don't know solid numbers on how long the EMP grenades last. I'll have to ask Chief. He's got all the numbers, all the stats in his wizard tower over there somewhere. But it doesn't affect the detonation of the X-Kairos. Jobu gets it on, and he gets it detonated rather quickly. Anomaly back towards Attic. We've had a lot of kind of questions about the effectiveness of the Toxic Babes. Akron forming up 3 strong outside the master bedroom. They got the reverse repel. They've got the flashbangs and amplify. He's forced back in a nice use of the Thatcher EMP grenades. Arv gets one. JetCon another. Kettering, not the tune they were hoping to sing this round.
It's just so straightforward when you have this guy on the board able to deny so much in the pocket of Kettering. In the blink of an eye, we saw everything stripped away from the body of Anomaly besides the deployable shield, which didn't even help him out because he was just in a bad spot to begin with once those ADSs got disabled. A minute left to kill here for Kettering, and they are so low on the body count and having a good chunk of their player base still off the site trying to recover. It's just not a good position, especially now that we're in the 5-on-2.
There's IMAT, another body. Akron are looking quite serious, deadly serious in this round. Getting ready to close this one down and to drop the difference to just 1. Papa P on the tall angle. Oh no, the rotation is just so poorly timed. He could have easily had JetCon there. 30 seconds to go. Wamai will again try to get into the tall angle. He does make it up there in time, and Bucka has one, but not a second. Plant coming down from Hennessy. No way for Papa P to feasibly deny this. It's down, no problem, and an LMG charging straight towards him. Akron have got the round in the bag. They really led that one from start to finish. Their Thatcher composition, boy, it is scary.
And they had instant establishment of getting big tower control. They droned it out. They completely forced Kettering away. That's already one part of the map in your pocket so early, because not only did you not have to go really shoot at anybody except a little bit of damage on a Bucka, but you also had the EMPs. Again, great way to spend less time on a simple objective of getting a wall open. And then we had Arv, instantly rotate and help out the Thermite of Hennessy trying to get open the Master Wall. And that also allowed the extension inside of Deer Room to get completely denied. And that allowed for not only a ton of hard destruction off the bat, but also opening duels as a win that forced the roam game to come back. So really everything just went according to plan by Akron. And I guess Kettering completely forgot about how much they have to give away when there is a Thatcher on the board, because they really just looked like they had no idea what was about to happen to them when he was on the board in the hands of Arv.
It's a worrying thing. They won't have to deal with it, though, here, because the attacker repick has meant that Thatcher is not in. But you know who is Finka? Arv, of course, making the age-old decision. Let's not use that utility. Let's instead go for the gunny. We'll bring the LMG. We'll bring the grenades and Gone 6s, Adrenal Surges, all of those different attachments there for Akron to use on the basement. I feel like Thatcher maybe is not as much required on the basement. You can kind of get by without some of those operators. The one thing I would maybe say, you could read the defense here and see that they don't have any sort of denial. It would really depend what kind of take you go for. I would say yes to a Thatcher on a freezer take. You really don't need him terribly too much on your pressure over towards elbow. However, looks like Akron are going to pursue freeze. So that's the way things will start here. There's always the decision to rotate. They're going to come against Kettering on the roam, though.
I think with only having to deal with a very small site presence, only needing, a couple shields to be destroyed, and then just the Wamai magnets, yeah, they really don't need a Thatcher. And most of these Surrey gates are going to be utilized for the hatches because they've been opened up to fall back by the defense. But speaking of fallback, that's not a total option here by Derp. He does actually pick an almost perfect moment to actually hop inside of security, but he gets immediately taken care of by IMAT. Should have probably went for that drop down security, but he didn't know he was going to lose that gunfight. You can't blame him all that much. Akron, though, still getting that opening duel as a win. That forces Amplify to retreat early on. And despite the heavy extension and emphasis by Kettering on that, middle floor presence, they have to fall back early on, and they're not even in a man advantage either.
Yeah, you kind of have to pick your victories there. You haven't got either. You didn't waste time. You didn't get a pick. You didn't really do either. You lost somebody. And it's important for Akron to really dominate the way that they start out here. Come in with a clear plan, because on the attack, that's pretty much what Oregon is, I feel like, for a lot of teams. Coming up with something, executing on it, not faltering, not changing your game plan midway through, and just sticking with it, because you need that confidence to provide the structure. Oregon is about structure. It's about your follow-through. And Amplify comes in with one again. Has been such a crucial player, a real anchor in the mid-round. Always can count on him to get a pick or two.
There's at least your only set of grenades. There are still some of the explosive lifelines, I believe to be by JetCon, to maybe break some of those shields. But still, 6 flash grenades, if used by Akron, because we have seen them not pop their secondary util in the past on Chalet, we could still have a lot of these angles completely stopped and at least forces Kettering to fall back for a brief moment. There is a small glimmer of hope by Akron, but things are quickly traded back once again by Anomaly. So still, no decisive victory just yet by either team, but there is only 20 seconds left to kill.
This could be doable. 3 Toxic Babes. Anomaly just needs to get him in function and block off those angles. It's going to be that split pressure. Freezer, 1 man, 2 by Laundry. Here comes the Therm. He's going to have to prove that Fragmite duty, or perhaps instead plant for the objective, but Jobu gets one. The coverage not there for Bucka. IMAT trying to come forward. 1 versus 1. Though the Jackal has the bomb, he really doesn't have the time. Maybe here's one over by E-Box, and he makes it through! IMAT, wow, there for Akron. Comes in late, out of time, but not out of it completely. And he gets the kill to make the round and even shoots the body.
Oh, adding insult to injury, Reese, denying both the Razor Bloom and the Laser Gate to actually do anything to halt that Jackal. I mean, it isn't a brick wall, though. You can still go through that, and given the circumstances, yeah, that did make the most sense. There's no way you're going to be able to fully rotate into Pillar and then try to work your way into E-Box, but man, that was just way too close for comfort. But still, at the end of the day, that win is still going to be something for Akron to make sure they have once again equalized, similar to what we ended up seeing on Chalet, except this time it was a 4-2 split. So even a better picture for Akron, especially on the attacking side. And I guess if Chief were here, he'd have to kind of eat his own words for the moment because this has been a rather attacker sided Oregon. So I guess my point remains true for now.
I guess score one, fellow score zero, Chief for now. But
I mean, as always.
Akron, always taking those
Yeah.
dubs. But Akron have just played way better. Like, they have come in. The first half was a little rough. I feel like Kettering could have gotten 5-1 there. Maybe that's, trying to go too far into the past. But this is their map choice. Let's see defensive strats at work. I mean, they got a coach. They got one of the best coaches in Siege I've ever talked to. And Akron are just kind of flushing them out, and that should be a no-win scenario on that basement. Look, the bomb is in a rough spot. You got denied. You had such little time, so much chaos. Akron are used to the chaos, though.
Well, they are also used to Bucka playing up here because this is not a position he has just immediately adapted throughout the beginning of the round. Breaking 3 drones, though, and gets out alive, potentially. Let's hold on here for a little while longer. The C4 is a little shallow, but if Jetcon hops in and Bucka hears it, I mean, that could still be a potential kill. Nope, Jetcon waits with great patience. So that Nitro Cell not finding anything. Still, though, we're already down to 5 drones here for Akron, and they still have 2 minutes left in the action phase. That's something better than nothing, I'd suppose, by Bucka. And again, he gets it alive, so he's now in a completely different place to maybe waste even more drones in this round.
Here comes somebody walking up the stairs. Wow, Bucka with a little drive-by there. Talk about a nice shot from him. He escapes from the T3 side to make it all the way back up to top main. And yeah, I'm at sort of on an island by his lonesome. No support from Hennessy, who's still outside the map. And Arv is just now beginning his rotate, as Akron were so focused on clearing this bandit who gave up with the first sign of contention.
And I don't know why IMAT wanted to go for more of that like armory stairs kind of clear / armory itself when you didn't need it last time. You just hopped in a master, cleared anybody near deer, and then you got the back wall opened up once attic pressure was already there. Just seems like adding in extra details that just are not required to get the full passing grade against Kettering. And that is going to cost them in early life, especially your top fragger of IMAT. That is definitely not a good sign for the later end of the round. But thankfully, they still have plenty of self-destruction and hard destruction as well to still have that multifaceted approach. But again, they've got to work a pick at some point because they are still down 4-5.
They need to work on the pace here a little bit as well. I'd like to see Akron try to quicken up their feet as Derp goes down, and oh no, Jobu loses such a crucial fight for them. Your attic pressure just evaporated with the death of the Hibana. And now it's up to a simple Thermite Thatcher duo, the old days coming alive here for Hennessy and Arv as they try to force their way through. Hennessy probably should have won that gunfight easily against Papa P, and it leaves the Thatcher in a no-win scenario. Kettering for a flawless round, finally getting alive on the defense. This is a strat that worked out, but it had a lot to do with the power of the early game, the entries from Kettering, and shutting down any hope for Akron to secure major map control.
And in the first minute, that didn't look bad by Akron. It was the exact same storyline that we saw when Kids was first in play. They forced Bucka to run away. They were getting the attic wall open up. But then they kind of began to deviate from the normal plan, and they just wanted to fully clear out Bucka, I feel, kind of. They didn't want him to be a problem later on when it wasn't that big of an issue last time about. So maybe just considering something to be more of an issue than what it really wanted to be, that kind of led into some fallacies there by Akron. And again, I'm in a position where, yeah, if you get that single wall opened up on Armory, you can have a crossfire established on somebody in Deer. But with the Thatcher, that isn't an obligation because you just throw out an EMP and it gets rid of all the util that singular player could have. So it just seems like, again, adding too much detail to something that just isn't required. Hopefully that will not become habitual here for Akron moving forward in the second half.
I guess if we want to compare and contrast what Kettering have in their defense as it were for Akron, Bucka is the intel operator on Echo in this composition. When we had Akron's basement hold earlier, they played the other two intel ops. They had the Maestro and the Valkyrie. Kettering haven't had a huge amount of Valk, sort of just proving that they can play without him, which is a point that we often attribute to Mira, because Valkyrie, for a long time now, has just been banned on every map. You can play without her. Good teams should be able to play without any operator, realistically.
Moving in here for Beginning part of round number 10, Akron are still trying to go in that roam clear. IMAT is back on the Jackal to potentially just speed up getting rid of this roam presence here. Derp, though, on the Ella this time could allow maybe some of those Gersmots to give some proxy information. And also the Scorpion is just an absolute menace of a gun to deal with, put in the right hands. So maybe if both Derp and Amplifier are able just to tag team, you've got that heavy damage dealer to the M14 and just the bullet hose of the, or bullet hose, sorry, of that Scorpion to just make mincemeat out of some of these attackers, especially if they overstay their positions and try to go for these one for ones. But at least with that altercation between IMAT and Amplify, we have the Aruni forced to fall back, but at least Derp gets one for his troubles. That's the opening duel in the favor of Kettering.
Hose has seen its first sign of life, and it's against such a big player, Jetcon and Urzo, all the utility that had been with it. They get the Ella, they know where she is, but the Jackal use of utility will come just way too late. They needed to know where that Polish operator was at earlier, and because they don't, they lost one. It's only one, though, and now you've got control of this middle floor. I think that matters even more because this was an area where a lot of utility was developed. There were so many reinforcements sent to try to hold this, and Kettering, did they get the most value out of it? Maybe with the time that Akron have spent in the meanwhile, kind of still droning, still setting up, combo that with the fact that, Derp is not back on site. He's still in T1. He's kind of hiding in that corner by the far door. And if Akron try to rotate, realizing that maybe their freezer take isn't going to work so great, they walk down that staircase, they might not check to see where the Ella is.
Ooh, a good grenade, but Amplify is able to survive it. A drone now just hard confirming where this guy is. I mean, that was already fact of matter, though. There goes the double swing, and now it's also an advantage favoring Akron because we have Hennessy catch Derp off guard in the roam game, and now it's just a site presence, but still having the smoke and all those magnets building up over time does give Kettering a fighting chance, despite the fact they are at a disadvantage.
Things looking a little better than they were just moments prior. You got to worry about the adrenal surge, though. Don't want to be running through any toxic clouds when that gadget is activated. 30 to go. Last time Akron were down here on the basement, they won it by the skin of their teeth. Maybe not going to be so likely in this one. Oh, no, but Papa P pops up, and he might have just sort of sold this round. Kettering are just going to play a little passive. Maybe Akron thinking about forcing for the frags. A couple unfortunate potatoed shots from the Echo as he stepped out, but Anomaly able to come in yet again. How many times is it going to be just Anomaly? 1 versus 1 for Hennessy. Has to run forward, knows where the smoke is, looking towards the wrong angle, but Hennessy from the adjustment there for Akron. What a shot. The Thermite on the basement again. Coming down to a 1 versus 1. A single attacker left with barely little time, and Akron will do it once more.
I don't know why you're trying to play for the range there. You've got a shoddy and you've got the time advantage. The best option there is that maybe we have Hennessy try to out-juke you and he goes closet, but you would hear that and realize, oh, he didn't push the rotate. That just seemed like just too much pressure on the shoulders there of Kettering. Perhaps they didn't want to not have overtime and they didn't want to be in a 5-on-5, and it just allowed that primal instinct to go through and be like, I need to win this gunfight or we are not going to get match point. And the polar opposite had happened, and now we've got Akron once again. A 1v1 that they should not have won is actually going to be fact of matter. And now they have to go up against a tertiary bomb site. I mean, everything is just working out for them time in and time out, just off of the mistakes that their opponents make, not even the intuition plays that they try to go for mid-round.
Well, we've come to the small tower extension part of the strat book in this deep folder, with the Frost not being played, though. I think a lot of times when people will use this strategy, the Frost is the main operator you see. I suppose Papa P and the Ella will come in as the substitute for that. Having the Frost mats just sort of adds that little extra bit of distraction, forces you to kind of come off and look at the ground rather than actually at your opponents. Given we've got all of the good burn operators up, it is not going to be an easy task, let's say, for Akron to clear this out. They just have to be level-headed about it. They just need to slow down, play smart, clear the utility, and most important thing, understand there is a Scorpion. It's not any old gun, it's the Scorpion. 40 bullets, impressive fire rate, and it could kill you in an instant.
This time we've got Papa P actually rocking that weapon, maybe just to deal as much damage as they can because they are in a do-or-die position. We've had this area of small tower trying to be guarded by certain players when they want to go for dining room, but I feel like nowadays it's just way too risky to try to go for that, and that's Exhibit A. Because of those grenades that are so in the meta right now, that could have killed Papa P. Honestly, should have killed him, but he is able to survive it. Maybe it landed on the opposite side of that shield, only dealing half damage, but now he's trapped in the smaller position of this top area of small tower, Derp may find one off screen, but still, it's only a matter of time before that great trade, the equilibrium position happens by Akron, and then all they have to do is just focus on that site presence and dining and maybe shower room if that's still being held by Kettering.
Well, I got a bad feeling that Papa P is somehow still going to find a way to get a kill up here, and even if that happens, it won't be so much of a problem because IMAT has eliminated Amplify. In the meanwhile, Papa P, he's not affected by the stun grenade at all. Look at him. There he goes. He gets one before the punch in from Hennessy, who was really stepped into more of a fragging role somehow on the Therm in the second half of this game. Akron are still talking about the possibility of moving on to series point to continue with what has been an undefeated record through the season so far.
Well, Bucca's still playing on the top floor. That's a good sign. Maybe they could have some sort of line of sight to maybe deny a dining room plant, perhaps. And other than that, things are still relatively equalized between these two. Still shocked we actually had the Ella player of Papa P find something, but maybe if we don't see Derp actually checked out here by somebody next to that hard wall, this could be a huge kill for the defense to make sure that this plant does not go down. And here comes the swing by Derp at just the right time, finishing off the thermite. There is the great trade, but still, having that small moment of chaos is going to allow Kettering more time to pivot around and hold off here in these last 20 seconds.
Looks like a KU match point will be on the cards unless JetCon, the player who we know for his heroics, can once more come alive in a clutch scenario. Bucca is worried about the rotation. He should be. JetCon is heading towards him on a collision course. Has reached the summit of the stairs. Look at the angle here from the castle. No way you can easily predict this for Bucca, and of course it'll be successful. That is a heads-up play if I've ever seen one, and it pushes Kettering onto match point. They win this, we'll get the decider.
Things really all coming down to overtime, potentially, as I had imagined. We still had, at least in terms of round-wise, a semi-close game, but it was the fact that Kettering did a lot of their heavy lifting early in the match and then kind of fizzled out. That was the one thing that kind of, deviated me away from saying that phrase. But now here, with a lot of rounds kind of being back and forth and literally one round away from either going to map 3 with Kettering taking Oregon or potentially seeing overtime, now that can remain a bit more factual in comparison to Chalet. But for Kettering, they are going to be going back up to Kids in Dorms. This is a site that's been kind of a bit of a wishy-wash, I guess, situation between both Akron and Kettering, because we have seen Akron get instant map control at some points, getting that back wall opened up in Attic and then immediately transitioning on down and clearing that deer extension almost off the bat. But then other times, they focus on the nitty-gritty and get too carried away with themselves, almost lost in the sauce, funny enough, as Brian would say, and then that allows Kettering to get the upper hand on them. If we just have Akron maybe focus on just the plan A at the beginning, since they have that Thatcher on the board, I feel like they should be in an easier position in comparison to Kettering. But again, that's if they don't get carried away, because if that happens, Kettering could most definitely capitalize on that factor.
Yeah, and it's something you always have to keep in the back of your mind. Match point scenario, there's a lot of pressure on the moment, and Akron, if they can score this one, I would really be just... You almost think of this game as one that would end in probably regulation. I mean, Akron are kind of a team that are known as such a powerhouse and have had a great run so far. I mentioned flawless through the season. Kettering looked to be one of the more serious challengers that they've faced so far, but this is their map pick. We have Villa, which is kind of renowned to be a bit of an Akron map waiting for us as the decider. And for now, Kettering focusing on the short term.
Once again, it's Bucca falling back early, but hey, there's the Attic pressure. So far, no one getting too outlandish to try to deal with the bandit. They'll just focus on the big aspect of this matchup, and that's the hard destruction, thankfully. So Hennessy will get that Attic wall open up. The drone is going to not get destroyed. That's a sigh of relief, as we have, I believe, Bucca's still in that roam game. Yes, so that could be a problem later on. But for now, we've got that great rotate leading in through by Akron, so they can not only get that Attic pressure, but also work their way into Master, because, you can't just funnel in on a site like Kids and Dorms. You're just asking to get just completely walloped at that point. So it's only a matter of time before we see this play into Master fully unfold.
Here comes more and more of these stun grenades. Akron have had certainly some hit or miss moments with their flashes. Takes me back to the Tachanka, who was sitting behind half wall on Chalet earlier, and he just was unaffected. He didn't see any flashes towards him. Lack of use for that utility. Amplify still holding this angle despite the fact he's lost his shield, and as the Thatcher steps over the other side of the doorway, that's going to be the signal. Aruni not going to continue peeking, but I'm not over from Garage. waiting for the possibility somebody will flank from main. Bucka has already made it past the net as the C4 goes up. Looks like undetected or even ineffectual, but a little bit of damage on towards the back as Akron coming in for their next step.
There goes the line scan, first of many to come. And the wall gets opened up as well by Hennessy. Things are looking quite well, but I think with Bucka still maybe on that roam game, we could see the plant maybe being denied via the vertical, but no, we've got the Ash of IMAT still underneath, maybe late rotating into white stairs. Everything is beginning to come into full effect here by Akron. They just need to make sure they know where exactly everybody on the side of Kettering is playing, and they still need to make sure they get that opening pick, and so far, that's not going to be the case because Bucka wins those.
Bucka has one. There's Amplify coming in as well, and oh, look at Anomaly. What a long angle for him. JetCon and Hennessy, the last two, the tall angle. It was profitable before for Papa P, but not so much this time. Hennessy in a really rough spot, but he's able to step out, and JetCon has a third. We'll need an ace in the cards from the Zofia if this wants to be a win, but as we're into red time, and as we're into no control of the diffuser, it's Anomaly again. A solid anchor, one of the most consistent members of Kettering. A 7-5, a close endeavor, but it looks like the decider map is where we'll be headed after all.
A great hold out by Kettering and not really giving away all that much until the final 30 seconds. But I think the big issue there was, maybe not giving away the isolations there for JetCon, but not having Hennessy go for the plant. I could maybe understand that you're afraid that you're going to have somebody from that white stairs position just run through the rotate hole and kill you. But JetCon from kids can just watch the top of white, and then the smoke has to get aggressive. And I don't think there was any proper rotate hole leading in from both kids and the back area near big window. So it would have been still a funnel leading into the sight line of JetCon. So there theoretically was proper coverage. So it really begs the question, why, when there's only 7 seconds left, you are getting aggressive when JetCon has already done so much work. I feel like, again, the primal instincts were flowing, but this time not for Kettering. Instead it was Akron, and it cost them the ultimate price of losing map number 2.
Yeah, I think just kind of some errors with the discipline, too many things working, and Akron kind of getting a little crazy. We understand that we've got Villa as the decider. Before we get there, though, we're going to go to a quick break.
In the final round of regulation, Reese, we managed to have Kettering claw their way back and bring us here to Villa for the third and final map of this best of three in the quarterfinals between them, Kettering, and also Akron Esports. And your refresher, my name is Fel, also joined here tonight by Reese, like I just mentioned, and we are already itching to get these bans over and done with. And so far, it's nothing too surprising, nothing too out of the ordinary, no target bans. It's nothing but the usual, a Flores followed up by a Thatcher.
I'm imagining Valkyrie and Cade to be the ones who go out here, but we'll see if that does come in. We could have Wamai, though, given Flores was removed. There's the Mira from Kettering, so we're already a little off track from the prediction. Akron are known to be one of the best Philly teams. For the long time, it was kind of their home territory. So for this to shake out as a decider, I think it really gives Akron a lot of leverage here. Kettering got their victory, though, on the earlier map of Oregon, and a lot of what it came down to was a good performance from them, 4-2, in fact, on the opening offense.
We had, especially for Derp, he really did shine through, getting a lot of those opening kills and just kind of setting the pace for Kettering that just almost seemed unstoppable for Akron, especially in that first half. Having a 4-2 split for the offender side, or the attacker side, I should say, is almost unheard of. But we had two very, very attacker-favored setups between both Akron and Kettering, although their lineups were fairly different from one another, with only one of those two teams actually involving the Thatcher in any of their plays. But since Thatcher is banned, no one's going to get him in play, but we still have plenty of other viable operators, such as, still plenty of Rain Breach with either the Ace or Habana, this time it being the first pick of that Ace, and then also the Nomad here in the hands of Papa B, because we all know how vital that roam game is for any team on Villa. There's just so much you can get away with. It's such a gigantic map, and you have a whole floor of that basement to just go for rotates on any of those stairs. It just, the possibilities, they are just endless for a defender. So having that Nomad is almost a must for a good chunk of these rounds.
Thorn here as well, as she has been for the majority of Akron's rounds so far. Has been a very hit or miss operator. I feel like for Thorn, it's rare. She's going to be one of those operators where it's kind of rare to see when she really does something with her gadget. You kind of have to be looking for it almost as a viewer. So if you're curious what she does in COD, I guess keep your eye on the Akron member there and see what those Razor Bloom gadgets might do. Going to be Master over from Kettering. Derp has got the R4C. He's trying to get a little bit more aggressive, bring that soft destruction, but also bring the power that you only get with this assault rifle.
Still having Bucket as well. What is an LMG operator? This time the Finka, though, not the Zofia that they coined a lot, especially on Chalet. So there is potential for backup. So far, though, Derp is kind of by themselves. They've got Bucket ready to hold the cutoff angle when necessary, when that position of trophy has been cleared out. And we also have Papa P getting active as well, putting down some of those air jabs in the background in a few moments to make sure no one flanks up near Asher Stairs. So everything is going according to plan so far by Kettering, but I feel like if they just try to hard funnel into IMAT and they don't have anybody late rotate leading in through the lower area of Memo than the bottom of Red, there could be a lot of problems trying to clear out this lone mute player, despite the fact there isn't much utility helping them out.
The offense a little slow going here. Haven't really done much in terms of pressuring onto the roam. Derp is, I don't know, tabbing out to change a Spotify playlist or something inside China, as IMAT still holds down from basement. And I'm really waiting for Kettering to tell me what they're going to do here, because so far all I've seen is the Akron setup and a very slow offense, which has done not too much so far. They don't have the Jackal that have him a couple rounds on Oregon. Would definitely be the operator I think Derp prefers in this moment, because he's got JetCon, he's got several roamers who are just out and about. It's Arv on the opening up, but JetCon mere moments later. Now you've got pretty much nothing for Kettering to fall back on.
And not all that much time in the world to really get those kills in their favor. We still have the Ace on the board, and maybe Amplify could help destroy anything that would get in the way of having those Ace charges detonate in the back of Hunting. So there is an option to maybe not go for a full-fledged funnel. But even if they want to work their way leading in towards that Hunting wall and also Bar Hall itself, or at least 90 is most called, you would still have to worry about the shield position in your bookshelf. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, especially for the fact that you are at this disadvantage, and you still have to worry about the toxic smokes and a potential flank by IMAT as well.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be hook, line, and sinker for IMAT. He's got a C4. Any possibility of a plant is going to be almost hopeless with him in the fight here. And as the time begins low once again, Kettering, a terrible start for them. They're going to call a 90 rotate audible, and it works out on the first kill. However, JetCon, he's able to push it back, and this is just clearly not going anywhere. Anomaly will try to find any frags that he can, but ultimately all of them will be impactless. It's Akron who cruised to victory in the first Aviator defense.
And having a rather, like you mentioned, kind of a stall by Kettering, it wasn't too alarming to me that they were not fully aware to, or not fully prepared, sorry, to go and clear out 90 corner. It was the fact that they weren't aware that it was a very light presence by Akron altogether. They had IMAT fall back off of red, so that's one position you don't need to hold any longer for an attacker. And there was nobody in 90, from what I can recall. If there was somebody, they were ready to fall back at a moment's notice. So there was not a lot of pressure done by Akron. They were falling back incredibly early, especially on their extension leading into both statuary and trophy. So not having the pace be picked up at all by Kettering, I feel like that was the biggest alarm that went off in my head, not so much the fact that they were taking their time.
JetCon back to his Goyo we saw him play earlier. I honestly, I hate to say this, I think the Thorn gadget and as well the, maybe a little bit to a lesser extent, but still sort of in the similar group, the Vulcans are a gadget which sometimes have a lot of impact, sometimes really don't do anything. I think just the way that you place them, it makes it challenging to hit. When you had the deployable shields before, you know right where it's going to be, the same level every time, you know exactly where you can pre-aim it. Now, it's not so easy. It's a little more complicated. I like the fact that they give you a little more time. I don't know if throwing them would be too OP, but certainly would be my way to make him a little more relevant. But JetCon clearly feels the need to use it, and we'll already see one from the outset of the round.
Well, here for Kettering, they are opting for more of that study approach, and, well, all right then. Derp is just going to win that gunfight. JetCon out in the open, not playing on the top of main stairs. Does seem a bit odd. Maybe they were wanting to go for that fallback leading into hallway instead, but that's just an unnecessary loss of life. Although Derp is low, there's a good chance for a trade at some point later in the round. But again, giving away that map control at a good rate here for Kettering is definitely a small issue for them, but there is still a presence of that roam by IMAT. He could spring up into action by red, maybe having someone bait for him near the statuary doorway. That's a good possibility. And also just maybe having someone fall back for a nitro cell play later on is not a horrible idea either, especially since we have Kettering so far still opting mostly for that, 90 Hall and Aviator presence, only having one player of the Habana actually rotate to Master Balcony.
It's been a lot of that kind of push and pull. Let's fall back or let's aggress forward for Akron and how they've responded to Kettering, who are sometimes slow, other times sort of still kind of slow, I think, for Kettering. I haven't seen a lot of quick action from them so far. Haven't seen them really rush in or move swiftly. Maybe that's because they find themselves kind of in a firepower differential. You've got players like JetCon and IMAT on the other side lighting up the scoreboard. Who have you got to match that realistically? It's been Derp, and it's been Amplify as well. Now finds himself on the Twitch roll. I don't hate the adjustment here from Amplify, but Anomaly running on the Habana as well has also been somebody who I feel like you can count on. But for Kettering, the clear definition of a Bucka and Derp entry has not been nearly as good as what you've got on the Akron side.
The biggest problem I see here really is the fact that Anomaly is the only person up until now that actually has rotated to Master. We do have Amplify, though, here to back him up, so that problem not going to be too big of an issue. We have at least some sort of response here by Akron. IMAT and Hennessy able to win some sort of altercation, but it is still a huge disadvantage here for the side of Akron. Now that Anomaly wins that one for one against Hennessy, that leaves only IMAT, and they're aware he's stuck inside of Astro, trying to rotate around near the double door set, and we've got the Nomad just waiting with great patience, and we're going to have some sort of response out here by Kettering, but man, things were down to the wire, especially in terms of time management.
I suppose that's kind of the game that we have when these two rosters line up against one another, and I expect that trend to continue. I'm looking at this as Kettering, who are going to just kind of feel out Akron these first few couple of rounds, knowing that Akron historically are supposed to be a good team on this map. However, it's not always the history, the storied team that's going to be the one that prevails. I would mark Vespa their triumph over NCSU as the clearest sign of that story so far from the results that we've had in any of the recent collegiate tournaments. But here in R6CC specifically, Akron on that undefeated run, Kettering clearly an underdog team here. You win this match, John, for Kettering, it gives them a lot more respect from every team in the collegiate consensus.
And we've had them, come close to big upsets. Purdue, a team that was still kind of considered by most, and I mean, I think everyone can at least consider them top five. At a point, they were the best inside of collegiate for a little while. So almost being able to beat one of those teams when some people haven't even heard of Kettering, that was a huge sign in the Purdue Invitational. And now going to a third map for Akron against Akron as well is definitely no short business as well. But of course, they still need to win the matchup altogether. It is only round number 3, and we have seen a bit of a back and forth so far with things being 1-1. I believe we're heading back into trophy room with Akron trying to the same stick up here with going on this extension leading in towards AV and also the bar side. But this time we actually have some backup by both IMAT and Hennessy to make sure that if JetCon does die, there is potential for a trade instantly.
An extension from Akron has not really been what they've done so far. They've mostly played on this loose concept of roam, and I think it's working. Kettering have maybe some trouble accepting the fact that, okay, this isn't going to be really any solid setup on the distance from the objective. It's going to be a couple members here or there. Akron, very mobile. Let's play IMAT and JetCon very sparse. Don't lock them into one position. We keep them in a constant state of motion. Kettering have clearly just experienced so much trouble with that. Their trades, a big topic of why they lost Chalet in such a decisive fashion, I think starts to come up here again.
Well, here for Kettering, we've got that rotate already being implemented here. Anomaly is still by themselves, but we had Amplify move in that position later on to help them out. I think it's always such a big upset having just your hard reach play by themselves, because if they get aggressively swung, that's potentially case gone and one of your main attacking points completely off the bricks. Now you have to only work your way in from the landing side / 90 part of the map, and that's really it. And if you still have the roam game potent, like for example, I'm at here playing near red, you can get flanked, and then you're just getting collapsed upon from 2 different angles, and that's basically the round completely wrapped over with Akron taking that one by surprise.
So for Kettering, they've got 60 seconds. Again, their execute really nowhere in sight. In an early kind of context, it takes them a lot of time to sort of spin up to get that engine running. The fact that they haven't opened the triple wall is worrying for me as well. It means they're going to have to come in this one pretty dry. And now as JetCon fires off against Anomaly, you really don't have a lot of tools left in the chest to unlock this objective. Akron are going to continue to play at a distance. Papa P has taken control here, and Hennessy, oh, there we go. This might be the play that'll save Kettering in, but a C4 from Arv and a SMG kill from Jobu suddenly silences any hope that the Kettering fans might have had to get the third round in their pocket. Papa P left. He's got a single flashbang. He doesn't have anything else realistically, though, and Akron should have no trouble clearing this one up. Jobu, still more toxic canisters are on the way. Finally, Papa P will recover the bomb. But look at Arv. Back in the corner, a Surrogate still stopping him. More toxic babes. Papa P will run right through it, and he barely makes it to the other side. But on a sliver of HP, JetCon lets him go no further.
And although we did have a relatively good start there by the attacking side of Kettering, they ended up falling short, especially since they weren't able to get enough movement out near Master. We had the Habana player actually fall away, and then it was just Papa P kind of left there in a really rough predicament. And also a lot of the smoke canisters cutting off those key entryways. There was no proper fluidity by Kettering towards the end of that round because Akron were just in too many power positions, and also not getting that triple wall opened up either did allow for extra aggression to be had inside of Statuary. And although that was denied by at least one attacker waltzing on in, it still was not enough because you had to also worry about astronomy, you had to worry about people pushing up from trophy, and you couldn't really push outward in through Master without trying to go for a very big gamble, which is something you never want to do on the offense, or almost never want to do.
Sometimes you have to take a gamble, but I think the problem with Kettering is that every round they set themselves up to take one. And they haven't had many consistent bets, let's say, so far. Why does every execute have to be 60 seconds? This is not the 60-second, 20-second meta. You should give yourself, allot yourself more time to kind of like think it through more thoroughly, to come in with a clearer plan. Kettering have an inability, really, for me, to dominate the roam. Maybe that's been their most significant issue so far. We're looking at Aviator next. I want Kettering to try to go for a more of a direct push. Let's ignore the roam. Let's let, IMAT and JetCon wander around while we focus on the matter at hand.
We've got Kettering already trying to establish those cutoff angles like they did last time. Maybe we will have a much fast or a more sped up position, I guess, here by Kettering, because again, they kind of stalled themselves out. We had a very fast fallback by Akron, yet really no action made by Kettering on their side. They just kind of got caught twiddling their thumbs for a little while in both trophy and statuary, but already establishing these cutoff angles, already wanting to go and drone out that middle four because they know the fallback has been confirmed. This is at least a sign of hope that Kettering want to change their playstyle, maybe adapt against how Akron is currently forming themselves out here on round number 4.
Again, it might be a little slow, though. We haven't seen a lot of pressure from the 90 wall. Hasn't been, I mean, you think about it, really hasn't been any hard breaching so far. Not any in a notable context that I really remember. Kettering have been very dry. A big problem for them is coming in on these angles, which are just so unfavorable. And I think it was a point you made, might have been on Chalet, could have been on Oregon. The utility from Kettering is just, it leaves you wanting. They don't really try to do too much in the utility field, and yeah, that's gonna happen every once in a while for you, fellow.
Seems like we still have a couple of issues revolving around, like you had mentioned here, for Kettering. Still wanting to try to clear out this first floor and not fully committing to really anything. They try to hop in through 90, then they get punished. Now that leaves into their mind that they don't really want to overwhelm themselves in that one key location. Derp is still looking for the roam game, and there's a minute left to kill. IMAT's already done his job. If there is a refrag, it's not going to matter. That is, in fact, true. Derp is going to win that gunfight. Things are the 4v4, but only 50 seconds left, and you've got the Razor Blooms, you've got Magnets and ADSs, along with the fact that you still have the Toxic Canisters, and the hunting wall has not been opened yet. This is just so many problems in the hands of Kettering. I don't think they have enough capacity to try to hold all of that.
Well, you see the utility war being fought by this Skull Door as Kettering try to do anything they can to salvage what has been a near entirely unproductive round. Only a kill onto IMAT really to hold on to. 25 seconds to find their execute. Last time they arrived on AV, it was a late call into a 90 bisect that they tried to move forward with. It really didn't work. They all got annihilated, and Kettering looked to be facing a very similar situation. In fact, it was also JetCon who struck first to eliminate the initial player who had moved down towards that 90 front. Amplify will change the tune, but it's only for a single kill, and this player Anomaly still kind of baiting over in 90. Yet again, Kettering will run out of time. What has seemed like the most common win condition for the Akron side has simply been sitting at home and waiting for Akron to wither away.
Normally as well, for trying to clear out that first floor, it only happens when there's a lot of pressure in red stairs. But for Akron, again, I've talked about this a couple times. I'll say it again. We had early fallbacks. And unless you want to immediately go into the first floor to play for the cutoff, there should be no genuine reason to want to play on that first floor unless you're going for more of a main and study kind of approach. And then you're moving around later in the round to actually go and work up through red or try to go through 90 to apply that pressure as well, which that was not the case for Kettering. So getting too carried away again in the smaller aspects is not a good sign. And again, they're stalling themselves. There is literally no one trying to stop them from getting 90 control except for one nitro cell. And that was only tossed because it just took too long to get set up to try to get that wall opened, which that didn't even happen either. Your remark remains true of there being no harder structure in this round because it just has not been an option for Kettering because they still have too much on their plate and they end up choking themselves out.
That's a good analogy there, and it speaks to where Kettering are at the moment. A team who is stifled every round with the same sort of issues. I remember on Chalet, we had a lot of those rounds, did occur a little bit on Oregon as well, where it would get down to a 1 versus 1. It would be one final player left, especially on the Kettering defense, maybe not so much in the concepts of their attack, where it would be one Akron attacker who almost had it. It's not been the other way around. It's been Kettering who, in sometimes, fail even some most simple concepts of the Villa execute, who, I mean, on Aviator, where's the split pressure from the study balcony? Like, basics here. Like, very basic level things Apply pressure from multiple different directions. I remember you talking about that post-game after one of the earlier maps. It's just been something Kettering have lacked, and they need to figure it out. I'm surprised there has not been a tactical timeout from them yet after how wildly out of control this map is.
Yeah, I would have mentioned that too, but didn't want to get caught monologuing. And oh, I think Buck has been caught with his pants down. That's unfortunate. Yayana gone. And once again, it's an opening duel as a win by Akron. And what have they really accomplished so far? Not a lot, except for that living room control. But even when you want to go for more of a horizontal clear, at some point, you most likely have to deal with that top floor presence. And again, for a team like Kettering, where they can definitely stall themselves, I feel like they're just asking to reveal their problems once again by wanting to go for more of a horizontal clear rather than opting to start out in that first floor. Because now you have to worry about that vertical pressure against you, and you still need to get some sort of 4v4 position because you lost that first gunfight. And with the roam game still thriving here by Akron, that just allows more opportunities for Akron to win yet another gunfight in this last minute.
For Kettering, Bucka has been one of the demons of this roster for really a long time. Has been somebody who could heat up, come into any moment, and really excel in a game double digits. We're talking as an easy goal for him. Just has not been here. Papa P with a TK onto Derp will lessen the impact of two quick ones onto Arv and JetCon. 50 to go, Kettering again. The execute is nowhere in sight realistically here with time running so low. And Hennessy on the flank as well. Two players in the sight line. Anomaly down. Papa P lucky to be alive, but more time wasted. And in the meanwhile, Amplify went ahead of the rest of the squad. Should have waited for everybody else to link up. You've got two players who have their full inventory of flashbangs and who have not even barely used them yet. Have not even thought about putting that to the test as they step in. A late air jab might stop the rotation, but what's more important is a C4 over the top, I believe, shot out before the detonation could come. Kettering are going to have to do something heroic here with two players on terribly low HP. They lose the first fight to IMAT, and Jobu still lingering around the table. He'll meet his end, but steady as she comes. The Malusi ends it out there for Akron, who stack another round in their column.
And to think if we had Amplify alive, that was the person who actually kind of ended a little bit, correct, Reese, in that 3v2? If we had that one player just wait, that could have been a whole nother story, because the fact we had the last two attackers so low in HP, they couldn't really enforce themselves enough to get past Memo, and we had a brilliant crossfire established too. So even if the mute player died in the middle of sight, it wouldn't have mattered because we had the Malusi just holding a long angle kind of close to China. So there wasn't a lot of options left for Kettering. And again, we saw the little wraparound happen from Astra because that roam game was never dealt with, and it just led to more problems than actual good answers by Kettering to really immerse themselves on that round. If we maybe had that top four extension happen first, and then we see more of a Memo take later on, completely different aspect. But because we didn't see that, that just remains a mystery, I suppose.
10 seconds remaining.
There have been a couple of those so far in this matchup. For Kettering, I am left with more questions than answers, and I don't think that's really the point where you want to be for this team. Kettering need to be at a spot where they are, they're defining what their own playstyle is supposed to be. They're showing us, guys, we're in playoffs here. It's quarterfinals time. You lose this match and you're eliminated. There are 3 more rounds. If Akron win these 3, they win and it's over, and Kettering's campaign will shutter to a close. Obviously, you still have the rest of our circuit, the wildcard tournament, as well as the Unified Collegiate Championship on the horizon. But for Kettering, you want to be confident in this playoff tournament to go into the next one and look even better. And so far, I'm seeing a Kettering who look like any other collegiate team.
Really sucks to say as well, because again, we talked about their moments of greatness, not even just in this matchup, but in their past games they've played against top teams. But this time around, they really have just seemed to almost, I guess, fully burn out, it appears. Well, Derp has some life in him, I guess. He's going to win the gunfight against Arv, someone who was an absolute menace in both map number 1 and 2, and kind of doing well in map 3 so far. So there's something for your troubles, and I believe we had the Cade Claw shot as well by Derp, so there allows for potential hard destruction. Maybe we could see that happen for once, but at least Hennessy gets the refrag. So those grenades now gone, and one of your main fraggers, who is so good in that entry, gets traded.
Fortunately, there's no time to press that advantage for Kettering as they lose one. in such a big momentum round. Kettering, they need the morale boost that winning this would give them, because a 5-1 half, it's just something that looks so ugly, that stares back at you with that just desperation that you only were able to get a single round. It mars the decider map, something that looks so good for Akron right now. But I hate to watch a game with such a strong team like Akron, with such a lot of potential in the roster of Kettering, but who have failed to live up to that in this environment. Let's go into round number 6 and see what'll happen. 60 seconds, it's slow again. Kettering have, at least this time, accomplished some hard breaching. That was the main gripe that we had through the beginning of this first half. And finally, it's changed just a little, but Hennessy, that gun, at such a distance, you wouldn't think it does the damage, but when Hennessy has got it, when he's lined up and on target, it'll defeat the LMG-wielding Sophia.
Nobody bathroom either. Hell, no one even at the bottom of Astro's stairs. We've got one player near Boar Window, but I think they got killed off screen, so that's not even in the books here for Kettering. They have just got Anomaly and Papa P, both on the eastern side of the map. They have to do at Astro stairs, someone playing near the rotation hole, and also Hennessy, who's still holding these long angles, not giving up any bit of pressure, still holding down these lines of sights, even having backup as well by another defender stacked in trophy. So things are really looking quite horrendous here for Kettering. Only 8 seconds left to go. There currently appears to be a pack dropped out here with the Vulcan. Papa B cannot move any further. We've got Anomaly finding one, but there's a trade by IMAT forcing just the Habana in a 1vx, and there's no time left to find anything but that one kill, and that leads to Akron taking now 5 rounds on the first half. Quite a dominating story here in that beginning part of Villa.
It's been such a consistent sight for me to get into the final, you know, the 30 seconds when the clock is ticking and Kettering are thinking, to see the yellow tinge of the Toxic Babe and the red fire of the Goyos Vulcan. It's been there almost every time. And you look at that last round, and it's just like the most clear example. You've got fire on the door, smoke on the wall, you've got gunfire, you've got everything stopping you. I think it does come back to another point on Trophy and on AV. AV lacked study pressure. Trophy lacked red pressure. It was never AV with red pressure and 90 pressure and study. There was always like one of the three that was missing. And I think part of that contributes to why Kettering have just failed and who have walked into a lot of utility, right? Like, we got so much burn in the Vulcans and in the Toxic Canisters. You know what, fellow? You saw all that. You've been playing against that this entire attacking half. At least you were until the side swap. You just kind of needed to play a little differently to adjust for that. You're the attackers. You got the repick. You need to bring more utility, maybe. I don't know.
Better positioning as well, really. Nobody wanting to go and play, like opening through mud window and then trying to clear out Astro stairs from the bottom area. That's something that a lot of teams will opt to go for in order to get that vital part of the map in your pocket, especially when you want to go for more of a study clear. Yet that wasn't implemented. And again, sometimes we see Kettering have kind of an okay rotate, and other times it's not even there, which is a huge problem on your offense. And maybe that just comes down to maybe proper communication just not being there at certain moments, but I guess we'll never know in the gist of things. We've got a new side for both Kettering and Akron, now opting to have the Akron side back on the offense. They are currently looking to attack, I believe that would be a trophy room and statue with a closet extension, which I haven't seen in a hot minute, but currently it's being implemented here by Bucka, being forced back by some of these flashes and also concussive blasts, and he can't really escape inside or outside of closet, I should say, because of that shield. It does get destroyed, but now he's just caught in a bad spot. He tries to get aggressive, but Jetcon's holding the angle, and that's going to be the first pick favoring Akron once again.
It's a rough spot to be. I think the smoke was lucky to even have survived the explosive utility. He should have been dead by the time that grenade hit came forward, but Akron have executed that. And okay for Amplify. A good shot, one that gives you maybe a bit more confidence for Kettering. They need a surplus of that resource because they have lacked it so far. They have lacked a decisiveness. They have lacked a lot of authority. And for this objective, you've lost the first part of the extension. Maybe you got some reward back, but it was your smoke player who died, and you exchanged that utility for IMAT's frag grenades, which you had already put in towards that clear. I want to say it cancels it out, but I think Kettering are going to have to prove to us that they can survive even in those scenarios.
Well, Amplify is in a very make or break spot right now, especially not having anybody close to back him up. He's got a long angle out to one of those many master windows, but cannot connect on a Hennessy, so he'll remain alive and can maybe go on an angle to still get that triple wall opened up. But that's the K claw's been destroyed. I'm not too sure if that's been the case, but with having both Arv and Jetcon having nades of their own, that does make some sort of sense. There is a great refrag as Derp is actually playing Astro Stairs to finish off Jetcon, but still, 40 seconds left. It's not completely over just yet. Kettering need to hold strong to make sure they can stop this play moving in from the backside.
Jobu, the recoil gets away from him a little bit, and if he had won that gunfight, it kind of enables Arv to move in, and so this looks like almost a sure thing for Kettering. Control in from Astro, though. Arv starts to punch forward. Perhaps if he had won that fight, a little bit more pressure relief from the shoulders of Jobu, who does not have control of the bomb. And so much distance between the final two targets. He steps through the rotate. He's too occupied with the Jaeger over by Lady, and he fails to check the close left for the alibi.
Having a much better start overall here by Kettering in their second half, able to waste a fair amount of utility and also time. I could have imagined that Akron would have wanted to maybe move around in through, again, like I mentioned to Kettering, maybe wanted to have somebody go mud, push in through that direction, maybe have backup by somebody as well to get rid of that Astro Stair presence, and then they could kill the player in tub, unless they're in a prone position. But even then, you just wait and then have a tag team on them. Worst case scenario, you get a refrag with a man advantage. That's not a bad thing to have, especially when all you got to do on the offense when you have that advantage is kind of play for trades, obviously speaking. So it definitely did scratch a couple parts in my head as to why we didn't have that rotate happen. But Akron, they've got rounds to bleed. It's still 5-2, and worst case for Kettering, that would have been 6-1. So I wouldn't imagine Akron being too flustered about that round. They're just going to try to go into the next one with a clean slate, basically. Is it the second half that just started?
Papa P having some difficulty with the evil eye here. Finally,
there we go.
He got it. He's got it. So for Kettering, I guess small celebration to have claimed statue. Akron did kind of bungle it up a little bit, though. I don't think you necessarily would say it was anything to do with, a huge strategy deficit or something like that. Akron, they didn't really have a lot of red pressure. It was mainly master side, kind of a very simple forward take. They got control of Astro. It was sort of a similar, issue to Kettering, though, where Akron had run very low on time. They had very little late game intel, and they were put in a spot that was just, there was too much to do. There was too little time in order to complete all the different objectives. Akron can be a quick team, and we'll need to see that for them to close out this map.
So far for Akron, they've liked to go for more of the direct approach. We saw them clear out through Master immediately, and now instead of going in from Master to go for that roam take, they actually want to go into Study in the middle of lobby leading up to main stairs instead, and then they'll probably want to late rotate at a further aspect during this round. We've got Jetcon actually hopping in the building from toilet and spots out Bucka. That's not a good way to start out this position here for Akron. And now with Amplify kind of isolated out in the open as well, he may find one, but he's got a hightail out of there. He thankfully does that. So there is the refrag, but still losing at least one of your main roamers and now forcing Amplify all the way back upstairs. That is not a good gesture in that first half of the action phase.
There's Arv. I think that will add to the relief a little bit here after Amplify secured that first class ticket back to the top of the red stairs. Akron thinking about what they're going to do now that they've lost their Sledge, who's a key component in the vertical game. A grenade. Oh, it's so good there onto Papa P. Had no idea, couldn't even react. Fortunately, Jobu with the team flash doesn't matter anyway, as he's stepped in and supported by Jetcon. Top of the stairs control is secured. Hennessy onto Derp, 3 versus 1. Amplify really will have to do something crazy in this round.
Well, he's got a minute, so time to rotate perhaps, but it also gives plenty of seconds for Akron to just go on their drones, spot anybody out, and I think Jobu has at least one lion scan left, so they could just pop that when they want to go for sight and then have a very safe plant position. Yeah, in fact, he has 2. So one for right now as they hop into sight, and then another one potentially for the post plant. If Hennessy can get that diffuser down, it won't be required. Amplify just falls in the middle of 90, trying to get aggressive for a pick. I can't blame him. It's a 1v3, but that does give match and now series point in the books for Akron. They just need one more solid round, and that's the game.
Would require an immense defensive comeback from Kettering if they are going to stave off elimination and turn the tables to Akron, needing 4 in a row now. And I think they they need to learn some lessons from that last round. They have to work together, coordinate to fight for the entry pick. That's how you defeat Akron here. We saw along their attacks, the majority of the time, not only were they incredibly slow, I feel like I've said that word 1,000 times tonight, but they also were fairly ineffectual when it came down to killing Akron members and maintaining a man advantage. Those two elements are just, I mean, they're cornerstones of how you win this game, right? You get numbers and you don't run out of time. It seems like the most simple, way that I would talk about this, but if you advance to that next level of depth, it comes down to how do you slow your opponent. In this case, Kettering, maybe let's bring more gun power. Let's really get Bucka to turn a corner because he cannot be going on a breadstick in the most important game of their season.
And this could be where it all ends. One more round, like I had mentioned, for Akron, and that is all. And they have just been simply playing much better. Their team cohesion really looks there, and they aren't really relying on just on one key thing to give them that win. They have a couple of backups in case something really goes poorly. But so far, the Plan A has been doing quite well for them in their attack, at least on the last round. Maybe Trophy and Saturday, we could kind of gloss over that because they could not fully clear out both Closet and also leading all the way into Asher to save their life. But again, they had rounds to burn through. And now it's a 4-round deficit for Kettering. They really have to put in the blood, sweat, and tears if they want to have some sort of rebuttal to get at least to overtime. And even then, there's still a good chance they wouldn't even win the series outright. Akron could just steal that from them once again.
It's a really tough spot to find yourself in. It requires an opponent to, miss a couple things for Akron, who have been straight to the punch. A lot of times, Anomaly taking a ton of early damage is not a very well-boding sign for what is needing to be, the big round that starts to come back, that gets the energy. Okay, Kettering have already got one defense in this half. It was an important one. It taught them some of the early game components, but let's see how they can close out and get some consistency going here.
Akron already opening up the pantry wall and the opening kill as well. Arv, someone who's been relatively on the true flex position, not getting a bunch of opening duels, will make ends meet on towards Anomaly. The Mozzie gone, some nades being tossed around, not going to find anything, but now the roam game will have to scamper for a couple of seconds. Still though, and that opening kill, and still having plenty of different positions to push in through. The only major thing they might need to worry about is, of course, that verticality I mentioned earlier in this matchup, and potentially having that one person who's kind of solo pushing by themselves near pantry to potentially die. That would force another funnel position, and then that could allow Kettering to readjust and get another round on their defense.
You've got a player towards bottom Mexico here for Amplify. This could be something. You have a player jump out of mud. I almost wonder if this is going to be a rotate call for Akron, maybe to pursue less horizontal pressure from this living room side and maybe something more over towards the pantry area. Could be the way that you kind of spice it up here, knowing you've got a player below. Arv is down in the basement, at least he was a couple moments prior. Now they know there is a player inside Memo. You saw the Z ping just a moment prior. The sledge starts to ease its way forward, and the easy execution there for JetCon as this match starts to boil to a bit of a high point, and Arv gets derp as Amplify is the final one to fall. It's a flawless round to end this. What a decisive victory, 7-2. Akron have eliminated Kettering, and they advance to the semifinals.
And although that was a very one-sided match, and we did get rather grim towards the side of Kettering, I mean, they still put on a very good show. Map 1, Chalet, something I did not expect Kettering to do all that well on against Akron. They did start off very well. And then map 2, they brought things back. They had much more fluidity. Their rotations were good, and they just altogether really, really forced Akron to think a lot more than what we probably had anticipated. So there were, again, some good options altogether and good chances for Kettering to actually win this matchup altogether. But at the end, Akron just silenced them towards Villa and had a very decisive victory, like you had mentioned, 7-2. So we'll get one of those Akron players to actually set up here for an interview in a few short moments. But we've got some time to kill. So any other thoughts I guess we can mention quickly about that matchup altogether, Reese?
I think I was hoping for this to sort of be NCSU versus Vespa Part 2 to see another, sort of sort of upset level game. And it's not even just for the upset. I think it's for the lesser ranked, the underdog team to kind of show themselves to be a more qualified opponent. Because in the end, when you've got that underdog, they're playing well, I think it raises the bar for the, the floor of our premier level teams that we've got for Collegiate. Unfortunately, I don't think this match in particular really helped to achieve that goal, but there's always next time, there's always the next tournament. You still got, at least for the Kettering side, the wild card tournament to look forward to.
Yeah, and again, I feel like a lot of the problems that Kettering did show might have been more or less endurance based. I know all the way back in the Purdue invite that was the final map they lost was the third one, and also the fact that just in general they seemed like a lot of their basics just kind of fell apart. Where we saw, especially on map 2, they had good basics. They were getting rotates done quickly. They were very active on the roam game. It took a lot to fully shut them down, but then on map 3 they went for a lot of funnels. They hard stalled. They weren't fully enabling their own entries a lot. I felt like just a lack of proper team play was the biggest issue, and Akron never really skipped a beat. So they were just able to get the one up on them because of that. And even in positions where Kettering were looking great, I feel like a lot of it had to do more or less with potentially Akron making more of the mistakes, and then we had Kettering capitalizing on that rather than them actually kind of one upping their opposition.
All right, well, with that being said, we're looking forward to the interview. In order to get there, we're going to see a short break, and we'll come right back. Welcome back to the Collegiate Championship here. We're into the post-game interview. We've got IMAT from the winning team tonight, Akron. He'll join us, and we'll get to talk back and forth with him. First off, IMAT, congratulations on another victory added to what has been a very successful third stage and the end of the circuit for the Collegiate Championship. First off, I wanted to ask you to talk about the differences it is for Faceit. Obviously, you can't play with Fozo. Does that really affect how things work for your map pool, for strats, for anything?
Yeah, not being able to play with Joey is a big inconvenience for us. We really thought we could, but we didn't realize that the playoffs how they are. So we don't really practice with Arv at all. We just bring him in. Obviously, we won a lot with him last year. He's a gunner. He's an insane player. So we just kind of have to bring him in and hope that everything connects. Because that our map pool is smaller, and also due to the fact that it's end of the season, we're trying to use interesting strats or old strats because we know UTSA and other teams are counter stratting against us. So we're trying not too hard to not throw all of our strats out the window.
Does it feel weird at all to have play in two separate leagues where you've got you've got old map pools, you're preparing for the 9 map pool, but you've still got we're operating with Coastline here in the rest of the leagues for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, the new maps are going to be very interesting for us. Most of them we've played. For example, Theme Park, we played that like 2 years ago. We have strats for it. We have everything made. Joey's been a great help with that. He's very smart, and his strats are insane that he comes up with. So I'm not really worried about the 9 map pool, but it will definitely be a rush and a change for the UCC.
One final question. I wanted to talk to you. We saw a lot of smoke and goyle from your roster tonight. And to add on to Kettering, who are already pretty painfully slow, did you feel like that was sort of the nail in the coffin?
Yeah, it seemed like Goyo's a great choice. We didn't really like it at first. Like we scrimmed a little bit with it, and we weren't the biggest fans of it. But then we realized how we used it. Like for on Villa, we used it early. Like on roams when we didn't really even roam, we just put it over there. We put Jet. He shoots it. He runs. That's 30, 40 seconds gone. He gets a camera too. We really enjoy that style of it. Not really like the end game smoke uh, play of it, I guess.
Well, that's interesting. John?
Well, moving into map number 2, having the Thatcher actually on the board, did you kind of consider that as like a huge sigh of relief of, oh boy, we get to have this guy in play, or was that just kind of like icing on top of the cake to help out with some of your attacks moving in on Oregon?
On Oregon, he's definitely an interesting pick because they banned Maverick and they also banned Cade. So we knew that they were probably going for like obviously roam strats like they did because they didn't care if hatches were open on their side. But for us, we knew that it would hinder our defenses, and that showed. I think the half was 4-2, if I'm not mistaken, or 3-3. Wasn't the best half we wanted, but honestly, it helped us a lot on our attacks with what they were doing, especially getting rid of Trophy Shield and stuff.
Yeah, definitely helped you pick up the pace a couple of rounds. But moving now into the semifinals, who do you think is the biggest team you've got to worry about as you advance another step forward here for the championship?
Um, NCSU seems to be the hardest team for us. I know that they practice probably the most out of any collegiate team besides us. I know that we're good friends with them, and we know that they get really good scrims, uh, scrimming some like CL and PL teams. So they're definitely a struggle to play against. They play insanely well and very smart, and at any moment they could be in sight winning the game. And it's really it's impressive how much coordination they've been able to gain in just the last year.
Fair enough. Well, with all that being said, before we let you go, if anyone you want to give a shout out real quick, since you've got the spotlight, I mean, by all means, feel free to do so.
Just shout out all my teammates, man. I love them. Obviously, I'm at home today. Everyone else besides me is pretty much on campus. I mean, Casey or not. Uh, we'll be on campus tomorrow for our game versus UTSA. But yeah, big thanks to everyone here to stream it and present it to everyone.
All right, well, fair enough. Congrats on your win again, Matt. Hope to see you again very, very soon here. You have a great rest of your night, man.
Thank you. You guys too.
Well, that was a fun interview, but I believe it does conclude our little journey here in the best of three. It was a very fun show, don't get me wrong, but towards the end, we definitely did see the weaknesses there of Kettering and Akron, of course, because of that, get to advance another seed further into the semifinals. I've been Fellow, also joined here by Reese as well, Sticula, of course, and we had Nova up here for observation and also Tango Mango down, as always, here for Prod. Always love seeing them here with us by our sides. But with all that being said, we hope you all have a great rest of your night and to see you all again very, very soon for the semifinals here.